Rio Grande is a 1950 American romantic western film 5-6 directed by John Ford and starring John Wayne and Maureen O'Hara. It is the third installment of Ford's Cavalry trilogy, following two RKO Pictures releases, Ford Apache, 1948, and She Wore a Yellow Ribbon, 1949. Wayne plays the lead in all three films, as Captain Kirby York in Ford Apache, then as Captain Nathan Brittles in She Wore a Yellow Ribbon, and finally as a promoted Lieutenant Colonel Kirby York in Rio Grande. A Rio Grande's supporting cast features Ben Johnson, Claude Jarman Jr., Harry Carey Jr., Chill Wills, J. Carroll Naish, Victor McLaglen, Grant Withers, the Western singing group The Sons of the Pioneers and Stan Jones. In the film, York leads a cavalry regiment at the border of Texas and Mexico. He has been estranged from his wife Kathleen and son Jeff for the last 15 years. Jeff recently flunked out of West Point and enlisted in the Army as a private. He comes under York's command, where York promises not to give him special treatment. Kathleen soon arrives at the fort, trying unsuccessfully to get Jeff to return to military school. As Kathleen and York deal with their son, their relationship revives. Meanwhile, Apaches have been attacking the fort and taking refuge in Mexico so that York's regiment can't retaliate against them. After an attack on the fort's women and children where the children are kidnapped, York pursues Apache raiders into Mexico and raids their villages with permission from his general. He saves the kidnapped children, and returns to Kathleen settling into her role as military wife on the fort. While originally Ford was uninterested in directing another Western, his studio wouldn't permit him to start The Quiet Man until he directed Rio Grande. The script was based on a short story by James Warner Bellow, which was inspired by historical events. The film was shot in only 32 days in Monument Valley, Utah. After its release, it made a modest profit, with reviewers praising the music and the action, but noting that the themes were well worn. Later reviews praised the natural beauty of the shooting location, but were mixed about its efficacy. The film can be read as anticipating the frustration with international borders the U.S. military would experience in the Vietnam War, with the solution to ignore international borders reflecting the conservative politics of Bellow and scriptwriter James Kevin McGuinness. The film is one of the least sympathetic of Ford's westerns to Native Americans, depicting them as bloodthirsty and villainous. In contrast to its one-sided portrayal of Native Americans, its treatment of the reconciliation of an estranged couple and their son is emotionally complex. Rio Grande also addresses issues of class, showing a rejection of class privilege common in Ford's work. Plot. In the summer of 1879, Lieutenant Colonel Kirby York is posted on the Texas frontier in command of the 2nd U.S. Cavalry Regiment to defend settlers against attacks by marauding Apaches. York has just captured the Apaches' leader. Apaches have been using Mexico as a sanctuary from pursuit, and the regiment is suffering from a serious shortage of troops. York has been estranged from his wife and son for 15 years, after he set fire to his wife's family's plantation in the South under orders from his commanding officer during the Shenandoah Valley campaign of the American Civil War. York's son, Trooper Jefferson, Jeff, York, is one of 18 recruits sent to the regiment. After failing mathematics and flunking out of West Point, he immediately enlisted as a private in the Army. In a meeting with his father, York informs him that he will receive no special treatment in the brutal way of life he has chosen. Jeff declares he wants none. Through his willingness to undergo any test or trial, Jeff befriends Travis Tyree and Daniel Sandy Boone, as well as the long-serving career troopers of the regiment. Tyree is on the run from the law for killing a man, but wants to wait to go to trial until after his sister's wedding. York's estranged wife, Kathleen, arrives unexpectedly to buy the underage Jeff out of his enlistment. In a showdown with his mother, Jeff refuses her attempt to buy him out of the Army. The struggle over their son's future rekindles the romance the couple once felt for each other. The Apaches attack the fort one night. Many of them are killed by the awakened troopers, but they succeed in freeing their leader. When York's patrol reaches the Rio Grande, too late to capture the Apaches he was following, he meets a Mexican patrol. York and the Mexican lieutenant in command exchange military courtesies, and both confirm that the U.S. troops cannot cross into Mexico. York is visited by his former Civil War commander, Philip Sheridan, now commanding general of the Military Division of the Missouri, the headquarters responsible for pacifying the Great Plains. Sheridan has decided to order York to cross the Rio Grande into Mexico in pursuit of the Apaches and kill them all, an action with serious political implications. Sheridan promises that if York draws a court-martial as a result of the orders Sheridan legally cannot give him, he will ensure that the members of the court will be his fellow soldiers from the Civil War. York accepts the assignment. Before York leads his men toward Mexico, he sends the women and children to Ft. Bliss for safety, with an escort including Jeff. Jeff and Boone meet Tyree, who has gone absent without leave to evade a Texas marshal who is looking for him. Tyree informs them that there are Apaches in the area. The Apaches attack the wagons and capture the one carrying the children and Corporal Bell's wife. The Braves kill some of the escorting cavalry. While the remainder fence off the Apaches, Jeff returns to the fort for reinforcements. Tyree saves him from an Apache attack on the way. The second meets the survivors of the escort and follows the Apache raiders. They discover the burnt-out wagon and the body of Corporal Bell's wife, but there is no sign of the children. In the meantime, Tyree rejoins the regiment and tells them he trailed the Apaches to their hideout in Mexico. Working with Tyree, York permits 3 troopers, Tyree, Boone, and Jeff, to infiltrate the village where the Apaches have taken the children. Then York leads his regiment in an all-out attack. The cavalrymen rescue all of the children unharmed, though Colonel York is wounded by an arrow that he orders Jeff to remove. He is taken back to the fort by his victorious troops, where Kathleen meets him and holds his hand as he is carried on a travoy into the post. After Colonel York recovers, troopers Tyree, Boone, Jeff, Corporal Bell, an Indian scout son of many mules are decorated. At the ceremony, when one of the Texas Marshals reappears, Trooper Tyree continues his run from the law, stealing General Sheridan's horse for the purpose. As the troops pass in review, the regimental band plays Dixie at the General's request, apparently to please Mrs. York. Cast: John Wayne, Maureen O'Hara, and Claude Jarman Jr. in Rio Grande. John Wayne as Lieutenant Colonel Kirby York. Maureen O'Hara as Kathleen York. Ben Johnson as Trooper Travis Tyree. Claude Jarman Jr. as Trooper Jefferson York. Harry Carey Jr. as Trooper Daniel Sandy Boone. Chill Wills as Dr. Wilkins, Regimental Surgeon. J. Carroll Naish as General Philip Sheridan. Victor McLaglen as Sergeant Major Quinn Cannon. Grant Withers as Deputy Marshal. Sons of the Pioneers as the Regimental Singers. Ken Curtis as the lead singer of the Regimental Singers. Shug Fisher as Regimental Singer and Regimental Bugler. Peter Ortiz as Captain St. Jacques. Steve Pendleton as Captain Prescott. Carolyn Grimes as Margaret Mary. Alberto Morin as Mexican Lieutenant. Stan Jones as Sergeant. Fred Kennedy as Trooper Heinze. Production. Background. With the completion of Wagon Master, Ford did not want to make another Western. Instead, he wanted to film the Ireland-set romantic comedy drama film The Quiet Man with Wayne and Maureen O'Hara, but Herbert Yates, the studio president of Republic Pictures, insisted that Ford first make Rio Grande with the same pairing of Wayne and O'Hara because he thought the script of The Quiet Man was weak and that the story was of little general interest. Yates insisted that Rio Grande be made before The Quiet Man, to offset the anticipated losses on that film. 9-2 when The Quiet Man was eventually released in 1952, though, it vastly outperformed Rio Grande by grossing $3.8 million in its first year and giving Yates and Republic Pictures one of the top 10 hits of the year. 10. Writing. The script for Rio Grande was written by Irish-born screenwriter James Kevin McGuinness. It is based on a short story, Mission with No Record, by James Bella that appeared in the Saturday Evening Post on September 27, 1947. 11 McGuinness had been working at MGM as a story editor, and either resigned or was fired for his extremely conservative politics. Patrick Ford, John Ford's son, reported that many of the long speeches that McGuinness included in his script were cut in the final filming, and that many scenes were improvised. 12 McGuinness based his story on a specific raid by the 4th Cavalry Regiment, United States, in May 1873. Colonel Ranald Mackenzie, under orders from General Phil Sheridan, crossed the border to fight Kickapoo people, and kidnapped some of their women and children to hold as hostages. This was illegal, and the Mexican government protested. 13-14 McGuinness made several changes to the original story on Ford's request. He made the main character more sympathetic and less ruthless. There are also differences between the film and the historical events. In the film, Apache kidnap white American women and children, but in the historical event, members of the 4th Cavalry Regiment kidnapped Kickapoo women and children. In the film, the Mexican officer seems relieved that York helped to kill Native Americans. In the historical event, the Mexican government protested the raid as a violation of their international border. 15. During filming, the film was called Rio Bravo and then Rio Grande Command until right before release. 16. Casting. Skilled stuntman and rodeo star Ben Johnson played his third credited role in Rio Grande. The stunt where he rides 2 horses Roman style, standing on the backs of 2 separate horses, took 3 weeks to master. 17. Rio Grande was the first of 3 films directed by Ford starring the pairing of John Wayne and Maureen O'Hara, followed by The Quiet Man in 1952-18 and The Wings of Eagles in 1957. Wayne and O'Hara also starred together in McLintock, 1963, and Big Jake, 1971. Filming. The film was shot entirely on location in Monument Valley near Moab, Utah. Archie Stout was the second unit director and Bert Glennon also helped with cinematography. 19 O'Hara recalled that the weather was so hot that production crew dug a pit covered by a tarp to have a cooler resting place. 20. The location shoot, which Harry Carey described as a vacation picture, was shot in just 32 days, with 665 takes of 646 setups. O'Hara recalled that Ford insulted and belittled Wayne frequently on set. 1621 While those who knew Ford were accustomed to his abusive behavior, Claude Jarman, another newcomer to the Ford set, felt like the cast was scared and you never knew what Ford was going to do. 22. Ford wanted the military aspects of the film to be realistic. The film uses the conical Sibley tents that were used then, as well as Primus stoves. Actors were not permitted to wash their cavalry uniforms to ensure that they looked dusty and lived in. 23. Music. The film contains folk songs led by the Sons of the Pioneers, one of whum is Ken Curtis, Ford's future son-in-law. 24. Studio President Yates insisted that the group appear in the film. Ford disliked being forced to use them, and how they appeared incongruous with cavalrymen. 25. Victor Young wrote the score. On the music, Ford biographer and film critic Scott Amon said there was too much of it, but that it gives the film an air of plaintive longing. 26. Reception. Rio Grande cost $1.2 million to make, and earned $2 million. Its net profit was $215,634. 26. A review by New York Times described it as a familiar story that travels a well-rutted road but that the horsemanship never was better. It was also noted for its similarities to the 1935 epic adventure film The Lives of a Bengal Lancer. Praise was given, though, for the Western-style ballads sung by the Sons of the Pioneers. 27. William Brogdon at Variety summarized the film as big brawling mass action clashes, mixed together with a substantial portion of good, honest sentiment which predict box office success. 5. Gary Wills's 1997 book, John Wayne's America, called Rio Grande the most beautifully filmed of the cavalry trilogy. He attributed this to the landscape in Moab, the sensitivity of the cinematographers, and intimate tent scenes that emphasize emotion on actors' faces. 19. In a 2017 book on Wayne and Ford's films and friendship, Nancy Schoenberger conceded that Ford considered Rio Grande a throwaway film and that critics consider it the weakest of the cavalry trilogy. Schoenberger wrote that the film may be the most beautiful and most compelling because of its setting. 28. Amon wrote that the film lacks the depth of feeling Ford infused into the other two cavalry pictures, possibly because he wasn't passionate about creating the film and saw it as an obstacle to surmount before starting on The Quiet Man. 26. Themes. Political and racial. While films about the British Empire had been popular in the 1930s, they often featured military conflict with colonized people. After World War II started, the Office of War Information discouraged British Empire films about India, because the United States needed their help in the war, and films sympathetic to the British could have alienated India. For this and other reasons, westerns became even more popular in the 1940s. 29. For Richard Slotkin, westerns like Rio Grande produced after World War II were a way to transfer the ideological concerns of the war to the mythic landscape of the western. 30. In contrast to earlier westerns, which emphasized a lone ranger, Slotkin described York's leadership style as professionally irregular, enforcing discipline and the chain of command while adapting to the changing needs of war. 31. In a biography of John Wayne, authors Randy Roberts and James S. Olson analyze the success of Rio Grande, alluding to consensus that it was the weakest film in the cavalry trilogy. They related the film's central conflict of the frustration of diplomatic niceties and the untenable nature of borders to the beginning of the Korean War, which involved American soldiers defending against Chinese attackers in North Korea. In the film, the frustration is resolved by attacking Apaches in Mexico. Roberts and Olson wrote that this solution reflected the conservative politics of Bella and McGuinness, who believed that America's enemies who kill innocent people should be pursued into neutral countries if they take refuge there. 2. In a book on Ford, Wayne, and Ward Bond, Scott Allen Nolan also noticed that Rio Grande's reactionary attitude toward Apaches as simplistic savages reflected the arch-conservative views of McGuinness. 13. In a biography of John Ford, Joseph McBride saw Rio Grande as an early warning allegory of the Korean War that expressed Ford's anti-communist feelings. 16. Richard Slotkin, in his book on the frontier myth in America, also noticed anti-communist parallels. He wrote that the river in Rio Grande is a Yalu or Iron Curtain, which can only be crossed in arms for battles of rescue and / or annihilation. 32. The depiction of Native Americans in Rio Grande was very negative. Frank Nugent had previously written scripts for Ford's westerns, and his treatment of Native Americans was sympathetic. McGuinness, in contrast, was not. Joseph Breen, acting under the Production Code Administration, said the script was blatantly racist and asked the producers to cut some of the more egregious lines, which they did. While the description of the Apache as a scourge was purged, the violent actions of the Apache remained in the film. 16. The bodies of the victims are not shown on screen, allowing viewers to assume the worst. 33. Filmmaker Kathleen McDonough believed that the negative depiction of Native Americans showed a diminished hope for world peace after World War II. 34. The theme of becoming savage in order to defeat savages anticipated a common conflict in films about the Vietnam War. 35. Masculinity and family relationships. Rio Grande, while a western, involves family drama, which is unusual in a genre associated with male friendship and mobility. Russell Murph, a journalism professor at the University of Idaho, wrote on 1950s masculinity in the Cavalry trilogy. 36-37 McBride called it Ford's first mature love story, where the emotionally complex family drama elevates Rio Grande above its crudely racist and stridently jingoistic military plot. For classical Hollywood film scholars Galen Studler and Matthew Bernstein 38 the emotional theme for both Kathleen and York is that they must confront and resolve the tension between the demands of duty and the love of family. Ultimately, to survive on the frontier, a man needs not just endurance, but also the comfort of family. 39. McBride saw Ford's sensitive treatment of Jeff as a possible sign of self-recrimination over his cold-hearted treatment of Pat, Ford's own son. The ending of the film shows Kathleen performing household chores and waiting with the other wives to show that she is returning to stay with York, which McBride calls emotionally compelling despite its qualified sexism. 16 When York returns, injured on a stretcher, Kathleen publicly walks alongside him, holding his hand, making her decision to stay with him one that includes the entire Ford community, where women share in suffering while their husbands fight. 40 While Kathleen's role is limited, she still represents a greater feminine presence than in many other westerns, such as those by Howard Hawks, Anthony Mann, or John Sturges. 41. Rio Grande's Western family drama shows, for Murph, the dynamic tensions of the balance between masculine adventurism and a settled domestic existence. 37 Schoenberger noticed that the relationship between York and his abandoned son Jeff was characterized by on-screen pain. York allows a fist fight between Jeff and a stronger man to continue so Jeff can try to prove himself. Later, when York is shot by an Apache arrow, he asks Jeff to take it out, a feat that takes physical strength and an unflinching ability to inflict pain on a loved one in order to save his life. 42. Class. Murph also looks at the treatment of class in the Cavalry trilogy. Kathleen initially wants to take her son back home with her so that he can be tutored in mathematics, the subject he failed, and return to West Point, where he can get a commission as an officer. This represents her expectations for her son as an upper-class woman. York calls this attitude special privilege for special born, and he prefers that their son Jeff work his way up from an enlisted trooper by proving himself as a man and soldier. Kathleen yields to his preference, although for Murph, this borders on the far-fetched. Still, the rejection of class privilege for the adventure of life in the West is a common theme in Ford's work. 43 For Wills, Kathleen represented lingering unrest from the Civil War, whose resentment faded as she saw the man who ordered her family home to be burned during the Civil War take part in the Fort's society. Tyree, also a Southerner, demonstrated collaboration with Northerners. 44. Accolades. The film was recognized by the American Film Institute in 2008, AFI's 10 Top 10, nominated Western film. It was one of 50 films nominated for the Top 10 Best Westerns. Marion Robert Morrison won a May 26, 1907 June 11, 1979, known professionally as John Wayne, was an American actor. Nicknamed Duke, he became a popular icon through his starring roles in films which were produced during Hollywood's golden age, especially in Western and war movies. His career flourished from the silent film era of the 1920s through the American New Wave, as he appeared in a total of 179 film and television productions. He was among the top box office draws for 3 decades, 3-4, and appeared with many other important Hollywood stars of his era. In 1999, the American Film Institute selected Wayne as one of the greatest male stars of classic American cinema. 5. Wayne was born in Winterset, Iowa, but grew up in Southern California. After losing his football scholarship to the University of Southern California due to a body surfing accident, he began working for the Fox Film Corporation. He appeared mostly in small parts, but his first leading role came in Raoul Walsh's Western The Big Trail, 1930, an early widescreen film epic that was a box office failure. He played leading roles in numerous B-movies during the 1930s, most of them also westerns, without becoming a major name. John Ford's Stagecoach, 1939, made Wayne a mainstream star, and he starred in 142 motion pictures altogether. According to biographer Ronald Davis, John Wayne personified for millions the nation's frontier heritage. 7. Wayne's other roles in westerns included a cattleman driving his herd on the Chisholm Trail in Red River, 1948, a Civil War veteran whose niece is abducted by a tribe of Comanches in The Searchers, 1956, a troubled rancher competing with a lawyer, James Stewart, for a woman's hand in The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, 1962, and a cantankerous one-eyed marshal in True Grit, 1969, for which he received the Academy Award for Best Actor. Wayne is also remembered for his roles in The Quiet Man, 1952, with Maureen O'Hara, Rio Bravo, 1959, with Dean Martin, and The Longest Day, 1962. In his final screen performance, he starred as an aging gunfighter battling cancer in The Shootist, 1976. Wayne made his last public appearance at the Academy Awards ceremony on April 9, 1979-89, and died of stomach cancer 2 months later. 10. In 1980, he was posthumously awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom, the highest civilian honor of the United States. 11-12. Early life. The house in Winterset, Iowa, where Wayne was born. Wayne was born Marion Robert Morrison on May 26, 1907, at 224 South 2nd Street in Winterset, Iowa. 13. The local paper, Winterset Madisonian, reported on page 4 of the edition of May 30, 1907, that Wayne weighed 13 pounds, around 6 kilograms, at birth. 14. Wayne claimed his middle name was soon changed from Robert to Michael when his parents decided to name their next son Robert, but extensive research has found no such legal change, although it might have been changed informally or the documentation may have been lost. Wayne's legal name apparently remained Marion Robert Morrison his entire life 1516, although to this day his original name is almost always referred to as Marion Michael Morrison. Wayne's father, Clyde Leonard Morrison, 1884-1937, was the son of Marion Mitchell Morrison, 1845-1915, a veteran who had served in the Union Army during the American Civil War. Wayne's mother, the former Mary Molly Alberta Brown, 1885-1970, was from Lancaster County, Nebraska. Wayne had Scottish, Scotch-Irish, English, and Irish ancestry. 17. His great-great-grandfather Robert Morrison, b. 1782, left County Antrim, Ireland, with his mother, arriving in New York in 1799 and eventually settling in Adams County, Ohio. The Morrisons were originally from the Isle of Lewis in the Outer Hebrides, Scotland. 18. He was raised Presbyterian. 19. Wayne's family moved to Palmdale, California, and then in 1916 to Glendale at 404 Isabel Street, where his father worked American Samoa, a pharmacist. He attended Glendale Union High School, where he performed well in both sports and academics. Wayne was part of his high school's football team and its debating team. He was also the president of the Latin Society and contributed to the school's newspaper sports column. 20. A local fireman at the station on his route to school in Glendale started calling him Little Duke because he never went anywhere without his huge Airedale Terrier, Duke. 21-22. He preferred Duke to Marion, and the nickname stuck. Wayne attended Wilson Middle School in Glendale. As a teen, he worked in an ice cream shop for a man who shod horses for Hollywood studios. He was also active as a member of the Order of Demolay, which he was later inducted into the Hall of Fame. 23. He played football for the 1924 league champion Glendale High School team. 24. Wayne applied to the U.S. Naval Academy, but was not accepted due to poor grades. Instead, he attended the University of Southern California, USC, majoring in pre-law. He was a member of the Trojan Knights and Sigma Chi fraternities. 25. 30. Wayne, who stood 6 feet 4 plus 1/2 inches, 1.94 meters, tall, also played on the USC football team under coach Howard Jones. A broken collarbone injury curtailed his athletic career. Wayne later noted that he was too terrified of Jones' reaction to reveal the actual cause of his injury, a body surfing accident. 26. He lost his athletic scholarship and, without funds, had to leave the university. 27-28. Career. Wayne with Marguerite Churchill in the widescreen The Big Trail, 1930, his first role as a leading man. Early works and first lead role. As a favor to Coach Jones, who had given silent Western film star Tom Mix tickets to USC games, director John Ford and Mix hired Wayne as a prop boy and extra. 29-30. Wayne later credited his walk, talk, and persona to his acquaintance with Wyatt Earp, who was good friends with Mix. 29. Wayne soon moved to bit parts, establishing a long-time friendship with Ford, the director who provided most of those roles. Early in this period, he had a minor, uncredited role as a guard in the 1926 film Bardley's the Magnificent. Wayne also appeared with his USC teammates playing football in Brown of Harvard, 1926, The Dropkick, 1927, and Salute, 1929, and Columbia's Maker of Men, filmed in 1930, released in 1931. 31. While working for Fox Film Corporation in bit roles, Wayne was given on-screen credit as Duke Morrison only once, in Words and Music, 1929. Director Raoul Walsh saw him moving studio furniture while working as a prop boy and cast him in his first starring role in The Big Trail, 1930. For his screen name, Walsh suggested Anthony Wayne, after Revolutionary War General Mad Anthony Wayne. Fox Studios chief Winfield Sheehan rejected it as sounding too Italian. Walsh then suggested John Wayne. Sheehan agreed, and the name was set. Wayne was not even present for the discussion. 32. His pay was raised to $105 a week. 33. The Big Trail was to be the first big-budget outdoor spectacle of the sound era, made at a then staggering cost over $2 million, over $32.8 million equivalent in 2021, 34, using hundreds of extras and wide vistas of the American Southwest, still largely unpopulated at the time. To take advantage of the breathtaking scenery, it was filmed in two versions, a standard 35mm version and another in the new 70mm grandeur film process, using an innovative camera and lenses. Many in the audience who saw it in grandeur stood and cheered, but only a handful of theaters were equipped to show the film in its widescreen process, and the effort was largely wasted at the time. The film was considered a huge box office flop at the time, but came to be highly regarded by modern critics. 35. Subsequent films and breakthrough. Wayne with Evelyn Knapp and Natalie Kingston in His Private Secretary, 1933. Wayne with Gene Rogers and Ward Bond in Conflict, 1936. Wayne with Marcia Hunt in Born to the West, 1937. After the commercial failure of The Big Trail, Wayne was relegated to small roles in A pictures, including Columbia's The Deceiver, 1931, in which he played a corpse. He appeared in the serial The Three Musketeers, 1933, an updated version of the Alexandre Dumas novel in which the protagonists were soldiers in the French Foreign Legion in then contemporary North Africa. He played the lead, with his name over the title, in many low-budget poverty row westerns, mostly at Monogram Pictures and serials for Mascot Pictures Corporation. By Wayne's own estimation, he appeared in about 80 of these horse operas from 1930 to 1939. 36 in Riders of Destiny, 1933, he became one of the first singing cowboys of film, albeit via dubbing. 37 Wayne also appeared in some of the Three Musketeers westerns, whose title was a play on the Dumas classic. He was mentored by stuntmen in writing and other western skills. 31 Stuntman Yakima Canutt and Wayne developed and perfected stunts and on-screen fisticuffs techniques that are still in use. 38 One of the main innovations with which Wayne is credited in these early poverty row westerns is allowing the good guys to fight as convincingly as the bad guys, by not always making them fight clean. Wayne claimed, "Before I came along, it was standard practice that the hero must always fight clean. The heavy was allowed to hit the hero in the head with a chair or throw a kerosene lamp at him or kick him in the stomach, but the hero could only knock the villain down politely and then wait until he rose. I changed all that. I threw chairs and lamps. I fought hard and I fought dirty. I fought to win." 39. Wayne's second breakthrough role came with John Ford's Stagecoach, 1939. Because of Wayne's B-movie status and track record in low-budget westerns throughout the 1930s, Ford had difficulty getting financing for what was to be an A-budget film. After rejection by all the major studios, Ford struck a deal with independent producer Walter Wonger in which Claire Trevor, a much bigger star at the time, received top billing. Stagecoach was a huge critical and financial success, and Wayne became a mainstream star. Cast member Louise Platt credited Ford as saying at the time that Wayne would become the biggest star ever because of his appeal as the archetypal everyman. 40. 1940s. Wayne with Joan Blondell in Lady for a Night, 1942. Wayne with Gail Russell in Angel and the Bad Man, 1947. Wayne, Wright, acting in a short clip from Angel and the Bad Man, 1947, click to play. America's entry into World War II resulted in a deluge of support for the war effort from all sectors of society, and Hollywood was no exception. Wayne was exempted from service due to his age, 34 at the time of Pearl Harbor, and family status, classified as 3A family deferment. Wayne repeatedly wrote to Ford saying he wanted to enlist, on one occasion inquiring whether he could get into Ford's military unit. 41 Wayne did not attempt to prevent his reclassification as 1A, draft eligible, but Republic Studios was emphatically resistant to losing him, since he was their only A-list actor under contract. Herbert J. Yates, president of Republic, threatened Wayne with a lawsuit if he walked away from his contract. 42 and Republic Pictures intervened in the selective service process, requesting Wayne's further deferment. 43. U.S. National Archives records indicate that Wayne, in fact, did make an application 44 to serve in the Office of Strategic Services, OSS, precursor to the modern CIA, but his bid was ultimately unsuccessful. Wayne toured U.S. bases and hospitals in the South Pacific for 3 months in 1943 and 1944-45 with the United Service Organizations, USO. 46, 47, 48 During this trip, he carried out a request from William J. Donovan, head of the OSS, to assess whether General Douglas MacArthur, commander of the Southwest Pacific area, or his staff were hindering the work of the OSS. 22, 88 Donovan later issued Wayne an OSS Certificate of Service to memorialize Wayne's contribution to the OSS mission. 22, 88 49 By many accounts, his failure to serve in the military later became the most painful part of his life. 41 His widow later suggested that his patriotism in later decades sprang from guilt, writing, he would become a super patriot for the rest of his life trying to atone for staying home. 50. Wayne's first color film was The Shepherd of the Hills, 1941, in which he co-starred with his longtime friend Harry Carey. The following year, he appeared in his only film directed by Cecil B. DeMille, the Technicolor epic Reap the Wild Wind, 1942, in which he co-starred with Ray Milland and Paulette Goddard. It was one of the rare times he played a character with questionable values. Like most Hollywood stars of his era, Wayne appeared as a guest on radio programs, such as The Hedda Hopper Show and The Luella Parsons Show. He made a number of appearances in dramatic roles, mainly recreations for radio of his own film roles, on such programs as Screen Directors Playhouse and Lux Radio Theater. For 6 months in 1942, Wayne starred in his own radio adventure series, 3 Sheets to the Wind, produced by film director Tay Garnett. In the series, an international spy/detective show, Wayne played Dan O'Brien, a detective who used alcoholism as a mask for his investigatory endeavors. The show was intended by Garnett to be a pilot of sorts for a film version, though the motion picture never came to fruition. No episodes of the series featuring Wayne seem to have survived, though a demonstration episode with Brian Dunleavy in the leading role does exist. Wayne, not Dunleavy, played the role throughout the series run on NBC. 51 Director Robert Rossen offered to Wayne the starring role in All the King's Men, 1949, but Wayne refused, believing the script to be un-American in many ways. 52 Broderick Crawford, who was eventually cast in the role, won the 1949 Oscar for Best Actor, ironically beating out Wayne, who had been nominated for Sands of Iwo Jima, 1949. 1950s. Wayne with Maureen O'Hara in The Quiet Man, 1952. Wayne in The Searchers, 1956. Wayne with Janet Leigh in Jet Pilot, 1957. Wayne with Dean Martin in Rio Bravo, 1958. He lost the leading role of Jimmy Ringo in The Gunfighter, 1950, to Gregory Peck due to his refusal to work for Columbia Pictures because its chief, Harry Cohn, had mistreated him years before when he was a young contract player. Cohn had bought the project for Wayne, but Wayne's grudge was too deep, and Cohn sold the script to 20th Century Fox, which cast Peck in the role Wayne badly wanted, but for which he refused to bend. 52-53. Bajak, the production company CO founded by Wayne in 1952, was named after the fictional shipping company Bajak in wake of The Red Witch, 1948, a film based on the novel by Garland Rourke. A spelling error by Wayne's secretary was allowed to stand, accounting for the variation. 52 Bajak, and its predecessor, Wayne Fellows Productions, was the arm through which Wayne produced many films for himself and other stars. Its best-known non-Wayne productions were 7 Men From Now, 1956, which started the classic collaboration between director Bud Boetticher and star Randolph Scott, and Gun the Man Down, 1956, with contract player James Arness as an outlaw. One of Wayne's most popular roles was in The High and the Mighty, 1954, directed by William Wellman, and based on a novel by Ernest K. Gann. His portrayal of a heroic co-pilot won widespread acclaim. Wayne also portrayed aviators in Flying Tigers, 1942, Flying Leathernecks, 1951, Island in the Sky, 1953, The Wings of Eagles, 1957, and Jet Pilot, 1957. He appeared in nearly 24 of John Ford's films over 20 years, including She Wore a Yellow Ribbon, 1949, The Quiet Man, 1952, and The Searchers, 1956. The latter film was the first one in which he called someone Pilgrim, and is often considered to contain Wayne's finest and most complex performance. 54. On May 14, 1958, Hal Kanter's I Married a Woman starring George Gobel and Diana Dors had its Los Angeles opening. In it, Wayne had a cameo as himself. 55. On October 2, John Huston's The Barbarian and the Geisha, in which Wayne played the lead and clashed with his director all the way, had its New York opening. 56. Howard Hawks' Rio Bravo premiered on March 18, 1959. In it, Wayne plays the lead with a supporting cast including Dean Martin, Ricky Nelson, Angie Dickinson, Walter Brennan, and Ward Bond. 57. Ford's The Horse Soldiers had its world premiere in Shreveport, Louisiana on June 18. Set during the Civil War, Wayne shares the lead with William Holden. 58. Wayne notoriously portrayed Genghis Khan in The Conqueror, 1956, which was panned by critics. 1960s. Wayne in The Comancheros, 1961. Wayne in The Longest Day, 1962. Wayne with Kim Darby in True Grit, 1969. Wayne with Rock Hudson in The Undefeated, 1969. In 1960, Wayne directed and produced The Alamo, his directorial debut, portraying Davy Crockett, with Richard Widmark as Jim Bowie. Wayne was nominated for an Oscar as the producer in the Best Picture category. 59. That year Wayne also played the lead in Henry Hathaway's North to Alaska, also starring Stuart Granger and Ernie Kovacs. 60. In 1961, Wayne shared the lead with Stuart Whitman in Michael Curtiz's The Comancheros. 61. In 1962, Wayne starred in John Ford's The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance with James Stewart. 62. May 29 marked the premiere of Howard Hawks' Hatari, shot on location in Africa with Wayne playing the lead capturing wild animals from the beds of trucks. All the scenes with animals in the film are real. 63. On October 4, The Longest Day started its theatrical run, with Wayne memorably acting with an ensemble cast. 64. Although the other top-level actors in the film accepted a token payment of only $10,000 each to play their roles, making the all-star cast feasible for the budget, Wayne was paid $250,000 due to an earlier dispute with producer Darryl F. Zanuck. During this time, the cast of the television drama, Combat, were preparing for the inaugural season. The principal cast, including Vic Morrow, were to go through a week of basic training at the Army's Infantry Training Center at Fort Ord in Northern California. 65 Morrow noted that the instructors who worked with the cast at Fort Ord had one common request: not to act like John Wayne. "Poor John," Morrow told a reporter. "I wonder if he knows he's almost a dirty word in the Army." 65. In 1963, Wayne acted in a segment of How the West Was Won 66 directed by Ford. On June 12, Wayne played the lead in his final Ford film, Donovan's Reef, CO starring Lee Marvin. 67 On November 13, another film starring Wayne premiered, Andrew V. McLaglen's McLintock, once again opposite Maureen O'Hara. 68. In 1964, Wayne played the leading role in Hathaway's Circus World with Claudia Cardinale and Rita Hayworth. 69. In 1965, Wayne played the brief cameo role of a centurion in George Stevens's The Greatest Story Ever Told. 70 On April 6, he shared the screen with Kirk Douglas and Patricia Neal in Otto Preminger's In Harm's Way. 71 On June 13, he acted in Hathaway's The Sons of Katie Elder with Dean Martin. 72. In 1966, Wayne appeared in a cameo role for Melville Shavelson's Cast a Giant Shadow starring Douglas. 73. In 1967, Wayne played the lead in Bert Kennedy's The War Wagon with Douglas as the second lead. 74. His second movie that year, Hawks El Dorado, a highly successful partial remake of Rio Bravo with Robert Mitchum playing Martin's original role, premiered on June 7. 75. In 1968, Wayne CO directed with Ray Kellogg The Green Berets 76, the only major film made during the Vietnam War in support of the war. 27. Wayne wanted to make this movie because at that time Hollywood had little interest in making movies about the Vietnam War. 77. During the filming of The Green Berets, the Degar, or Montagnard people of Vietnam's Central Highlands, fierce fighters against communism, bestowed on Wayne a brass bracelet that he wore in the film and all subsequent films. 52. Also that year, Wayne played the lead in Andrew V. McLaglen's Hellfighters, a film about the crews who put out oil rig fires. 78. Catherine Ross played a supporting role. On June 13, 1969, Hathaway's True Grit premiered. For his role as Rooster Cogburn, Wayne won the Best Actor Oscar at the 42nd Academy Awards. 79. In November of that year another film starring Wayne was released, Andrew V. McLaglen's The Undefeated with Rock Hudson. 80. 1970s, later career. Wayne and Richard Boone at Big Jake screening, 1971. On June 24, 1970, Andrew V. McLaglen's Chisholm started to play in cinemas. Wayne took the role of the owner of a cattle ranch, who finds out that a businessman is trying to own neighboring land illegally. 81. On September 16, Howard Hawks' Rio Lobo premiered. Wayne played Colonel Cord McNally, who confronts Confederate soldiers who stole a shipment of gold at the end of the Civil War. 82. This was another remake of Rio Bravo, albeit without a second lead the box office caliber of Dean Martin or Robert Mitchum. In June 1971, George Sherman's Big Jake made its debut. Wayne played the role of an estranged father who must track down a gang who kidnapped his grandson. 83. The film was a critically acclaimed hit. In 1972, Wayne starred in Mark Rydell's The Cowboys. Vincent Canby of the New York Times, who did not particularly care for the film, wrote, "Wayne is, of course, marvelously indestructible, and he has become an almost perfect father figure." 84. The same year, he was selected in the last round of the NFL draft by the Atlanta Falcons for his past football experience, though the pick was disallowed by league officials as he was 64 years old at the time. 85. On February 7, 1973, Bert Kennedy's The Train Robbers opened. Wayne appeared alongside Anne Margaret, Rod Taylor, and Ben Johnson. 86. On June 27, Andrew V. McLaglen's Cahill U.S. Marshal premiered, with Wayne, George Kennedy and Gary Grimes. It was a box office failure. 87. In 1974, Wayne took on the role of the eponymous detective in John Sturgis's crime drama MCQ. 88. On March 25, 1975, Douglas Hickox's Brannigan premiered. In it, Wayne played a Chicago police lieutenant named Jim Brannigan on the hunt in London for an organized crime leader. 89. On October 17, Rooster Cogburn started its theatrical run. Wayne reprised his role as U.S. Marshal Reuben J. Rooster Cogburn 90 with strong elements of the plot of The African Queen along with Katharine Hepburn as his leading lady. In 1976, Wayne starred in Don Siegel's The Shootist, also starring Lauren Bacall, Ron Howard, and James Stewart. It was Wayne's final cinematic role, whose main character, J.B. Brooks, was dying of cancer, to which Wayne himself succumbed 3 years later. It contains numerous plot similarities to The Gunfighter of nearly 30 years before, a role which Wayne had wanted, but turned down. 52. Upon its theatrical release, it grossed $13,406,138 domestically. About $6 million were earned as U.S. theatrical rentals. 91. The film received positive reviews. 92. It was named one of the 10 best films of 1976 by the National Board of Review. Film critic Roger Ebert of the Chicago Sun-Times ranked The Shootist number 10 on his list of the 10 best films of 1976. 93. The film was nominated for an Oscar, a Golden Globe, a BAFTA Film Award, and a Writers Guild of America Award. Personal life. Wayne with his second wife Esperanza Bauer, 1949, left. Wayne with his third wife Pilar Pallet, 1971, right. Wayne was married 3 times and divorced twice. His wives included one of Spanish-American descent, Josephine Alicia Saenz, and 2 from Latin America, Esperanza Bauer and Pilar Pallet. He had 4 children with Josephine: Michael Wayne, 1934-2003, Mary Antonia Tony Wayne LaCava, 1936-2000, Patrick Wayne, born 1939, and Melinda Wayne Munoz, 1940-2022. He had 3 more children with Pilar: Isa Wayne, born 1956, John Ethan Wayne, born 1962, and Marissa Wayne, born 1966. Several of Wayne's children entered the film and television industry. Son Ethan was billed as John Ethan Wayne in a few films, and played one of the leads in the 1990s update of the Adam 12 television series. 94. Ethan has also appeared on the History Channel show Pawn Stars to help authenticate merchandise supposedly related to his father's career. Granddaughter Jennifer Wayne, daughter of Isa, is a member of the country music group Runaway June. 95. In 1973, Wayne was encouraged by Pilar, an avid tennis player, to build the John Wayne Tennis Club in Newport Beach, California. In 1995, the club was sold to Ken Stewart, former general manager, and became the Palisades Tennis Club. In The Quiet Man, 1952, Wayne tells Mitcha Elinog, Irish, young, Flynn, portrayed by Barry Fitzgerald, that he is 6 feet 4 and a half, 194 centimeters, an assertion corroborated by Pila's book John Wayne, My Life with the Duke. 96. His divorce from Bauer, a Mexican former actress, was stormy. She believed that Wayne and CO star Gail Russell were having an affair, a claim that both Wayne and Russell denied. The night the film Angel and the Bad Man, 1947, wrapped, the usual party was held for cast and crew, and Wayne came home very late. Esperanza was in a drunken rage by the time he arrived, and she attempted to shoot him as he walked through the front door. 52. Wayne had several high-profile affairs, including one with Merle Oberon that lasted from 1938 to 1947. 97. After his separation from Pilar, in 1973, Wayne became romantically involved and lived with his former secretary Pat Stacey, 1941-1995, until his death in 1979. 27. Stacey published a book about her life with him in 1983, titled Duke, A Love Story. 98. Wayne's hair began to thin in the 1940s, and he had begun to wear a hairpiece by the end of the decade. 99. He was occasionally seen in public without the hairpiece, such as, according to Life, at Gary Cooper's funeral. During an appearance at Harvard University, Wayne was asked by a student, "Is it true that your toupee is real mohair?" He responded, "Sir, that's real hair. Not mine, but real hair." 100. A close friend, California Congressman Alfonso E. Bell Jr., wrote of Wayne, "Duke's personality and sense of humor were very close to what the general public saw on the big screen. It is perhaps best shown in these words he had engraved on a plaque: each of us is a mixture of some good and some not so good qualities. In considering one's fellow man, it's important to remember the good things. We should refrain from making judgments just because a fella happens to be a dirty, rotten s.o.b. 101. Wayne was fond of literature, his favorite authors being Charles Dickens, Arthur Conan Doyle, and Agatha Christie. His favorite books were David Copperfield, and Conan Doyle's historical novels The White Company and Sir Nigel. Wayne playing chess with Marlene Dietrich, 1943. Wayne was a chess player. Roger Ebert recalls that on the set of Chisholm, we were playing a chess game, both of us bending over the board on an upended apple crate. Wayne, slouched in his old stitched leather director's chair, had a crowd of kibitzers, wranglers, extras, old cronies, drinking buddies, a couple of Mexican stuntmen. He studied the board, roared with laughter, and said, "God, damn it. You've trapped my queen." We studied the board. I made a decisive move. "Why the hell did I just say that?" he asked. "If I hadn't said it, you wouldn't seen it." 102. According to Michael Munn, when Wayne was asked about Rock Hudson's sexuality, he replied, "Who the hell cares if he's a queer? The man plays great chess." 103. He used the same 1873 Colt single-action Army revolver in many of the westerns in which he appeared. 104. 105. Wayne had been a chain smoker of cigarettes since young adulthood and was diagnosed with lung cancer in 1964. He underwent successful surgery to remove his entire left lung 106 and 2 ribs. Despite efforts by his business associates to prevent him from going public with his illness for fear that it would cost him work, Wayne announced he had cancer and called on the public to get preventive examinations. 5 years later, Wayne was declared cancer-free. Wayne has been credited with coining the term the Big C as a euphemism for cancer. 107 Wayne biographer Michael Munn chronicled Wayne's drinking habits. 22 According to Sam Osteen's memoir, Cut to the Chase, studio directors knew to shoot Wayne's scenes before noon, because by afternoon, he was a mean drunk. 108 Ebert quotes him as saying, "Tequila makes your head hurt. Not from your hangover. From falling over and hitting your head." 102. He was a very active Freemason. He was made a Master Mason at Marion McDaniel Lodge No. 56 FNAM, in Tucson, Arizona. 109 110 111 He became a 32nd degree Scottish Rite Mason and later joined the Al Malika Shrine Temple in Los Angeles, along with fellow actor Roy Rogers. He later became a member of the York Rite. 112 113 During his childhood, he was a member of a local Demolay chapter in Glendale. During the early 1960s, Wayne traveled often to Panama, and he purchased the island of Tabercillo off that nation's Pacific coast. It was sold by his estate at his death. Wayne's yacht, the Wild Goose, was one of his favorite possessions. He kept it docked in Newport Beach Harbor, and it was listed on the U.S. National Register of Historic Places in 2011. 114. Political and social views. Wayne and the Challenge of Ideas, 1961. Wayne meeting with President Richard Nixon and Henry Kissinger in San Clemente, California, July 1972. Wayne addressing the Republican Convention in Miami, 1968. Throughout most of his life, Wayne was a vocally prominent conservative Republican in Hollywood, supporting anti-communist positions. 115 However, he voted for Democratic President Franklin D. Roosevelt in the 1936 presidential election and expressed admiration for Roosevelt's successor, fellow Democratic President Harry S. Truman, despite having supported Republican candidate Thomas E. Dewey in 1948. 116 117 He took part in creating the Conservative Motion Picture Alliance for the Preservation of American Ideals in February 1944 before being elected its president in 1949. An ardent anti-communist and vocal supporter of the House Un-American Activities Committee, HUAC, he made Big Jim McLean, 1952, with himself as a HUAC investigator to demonstrate his support for the cause of anti-communism. His personal views found expression as a proactive inside enforcer of the blacklist, denying employment and undermining careers of many actors and writers who had expressed their personal political beliefs earlier in life. Soviet leader Joseph Stalin is alleged to have said that Wayne should be assassinated for his frequently espoused anti-communist politics, despite being a fan of his movies. 118 119 Wayne was a supporter of Senator Joseph McCarthy. 120. Wayne supported Vice President Richard Nixon in the presidential election of 1960. But expressed his vision of patriotism when John F. Kennedy won the election. "I didn't vote for him, but he's my president, and I hope he does a good job." 121 He used his star power to support conservative causes, including rallying support for the Vietnam War by producing, co-directing, and starring in the financially successful film The Green Berets, 1968. 122 In 1960, he joined the anti-communist John Birch Society, but quit after the organization denounced fluoridation of water supplies as a communist plot. 123 In 1964, Wayne was a staunch supporter of Barry Goldwater, and actively campaigned for him. 124. Due to his status as the highest-profile Republican star in Hollywood, wealthy Texas Republican Party backers asked Wayne to run for national office in 1968, like his friend and fellow actor Senator George Murphy. He declined, joking that he did not believe the public would seriously consider an actor in the White House. Instead, he supported his friend Ronald Reagan's campaigns for governor of California in 1966 and 1970. He was asked to be the running mate for Democratic Alabama Governor George Wallace, who had been nominated for president by the American Independent Party, in his 1968 campaign, but he immediately rejected the offer. 115 And actively campaigned for Nixon. 125 Wayne addressed the 1968 Republican National Convention on its opening day. 123. In 1971, Wayne wrote to President Nixon, who was a friend, to oppose Nixon's planned trip to China. Wayne enclosed some hate literature on that Jew, Kissinger, who had negotiated the historic meeting with Chinese leaders. 126. Wayne openly differed with many conservatives over the issue of returning the Panama Canal, as he supported the Panama Canal Treaty in the mid-1970s. 127 While Republican leaders such as Reagan, Jesse Helms, and Strom Thurmond had wanted the U.S. to retain full control of the canal, Wayne and fellow conservative William F. Buckley believed that the Panamanians had the right to the canal and sided with President Jimmy Carter. Wayne was a close friend of Panamanian leader Omar Torrijos Herrera, and Wayne's first wife Josephine was a native of Panama. His support of the treaty brought him hate mail for the first time in his life. 128-129. In 1973, actor Marlon Brando refused an Oscar he had won, due to the treatment of American Indians today by the film industry. Brando did not attend the award ceremony but asked Native American civil rights activist Sachin Littlefeather to attend and deliver a refusal speech in the event that he won. Wayne was allegedly waiting in the wings and was so angry about her presence there that Littlefeather said he was coming towards me to forcibly take me off the stage, and he had to be restrained by 6 security men to prevent him from doing so. 130. However, an investigation in 2022 found that this is unlikely to have happened, and Littlefeather had no way of witnessing this take place. 131. Roger Ebert wrote that Wayne had a sense of humor about his politics. He recalls Wayne giving him a tour of his house. He pointed out autographed photos of Eisenhower, Nixon, Goldwater, and J. Edgar Hoover. I said I had to take a pee. On the wall of the bathroom opening off the den, he had a photo of Hubert Humphrey, inscribed with warm appreciation for your continued support. 132. Colorado Congresswoman Pat Schroeder recalled that John Wayne gave me a silver cigarette lighter during the Vietnam War that said "fuck communism" on it. I didn't know how to do that. I still don't. 133. Left-wing activist Abby Hoffman paid tribute to Wayne's singularity, saying, "I like Wayne's wholeness, his style. As for his politics, well, I suppose even cavemen felt a little admiration for the dinosaurs that were trying to gobble them up." 134. Maoist avant-garde filmmaker and critic Jean-Luc Godard, in his Cahiers du Cinéma text 3000 Hours de Cinema, 3000 Hours of Cinema, asked rhetorically 135. How can I hate John Wayne upholding Goldwater and yet love him when abruptly he takes Natalie Wood in his arms in the last reel of The Searchers? In a video clip which aired posthumously on People for the American Way's 1982 I Love Liberty TV special, Wayne stated that while he disagreed with Jane Fonda, he still believed she had the right to say what she believes. 136. 1971 Playboy interview. Wayne signing the helmet of PFC Fonzel Wofford during a visit at Chu Lai, South Vietnam, in June 1966. In May 1971, Playboy magazine published an interview with Wayne, in which he expressed his support for the Vietnam War. 137 and made headlines for his opinions about social issues and race relations in the United States. 138. With a lot of blacks, there's quite a bit of resentment along with their dissent, and possibly rightfully so. But we can't all of a sudden get down on our knees and turn everything over to the leadership of the blacks. I believe in white supremacy until the blacks are educated to a point of responsibility. I don't feel we did wrong in taking this great country away from the Indians. Our so-called stealing of this country from them was just a matter of survival. There were great numbers of people who needed new land, and the Indians were selfishly trying to keep it for themselves. 25, 289, 139, 140, 141. In the same Playboy interview, he also responded to questions about whether social programs were good for the country. I know all about that. In the late 20s, when I was a sophomore at USC, I was a socialist myself, but not when I left. The average college kid idealistically wishes everybody could have ice cream and cake for every meal, but as he gets older and gives more thought to his and his fellow man's responsibilities, he finds that it can't work out that way, that some people just won't carry their load. I believe in welfare, a welfare work program. I don't think a fella should be able to sit on his backside and receive welfare. I'd like to know why well-educated idiots keep apologizing for lazy and complaining people who think the world owes them a living. I'd like to know why they make excuses for cowards who spit in the faces of the police and then run behind the judicial sob sisters. I can't understand these people who carry placards to save the life of some criminal, yet have no thought for the innocent victim. 137. In February 2019, the Playboy interview resurfaced. 142, which resulted in calls for John Wayne Airport to be renamed. 143. Wayne's son, Ethan, defended him, stating, "It would be an injustice to judge someone based on an interview that's being used out of context." 144. The calls for changing the airport's name back to Orange County Airport were renewed during the George Floyd protests in June 2020. 145. Though the name, as of 2025, remains unchanged. In October 2019, student activists of Wayne's alma mater, University of Southern California, called for removing from the university's premises an exhibit dedicated to Wayne, citing the interview as cause. 146. In July 2020, it was announced that the materials of the 2012 created exhibit would be moved to the USC Cinematic Arts Library for research, to allow scholarship to continue on the role John Wayne's films played in the history of cinema. 147. 148. Death. Although he enrolled in a cancer vaccine study in an attempt to ward off the disease, 106. Wayne died of stomach cancer on June 11, 1979, aged 72, at the UCLA Medical Center in Los Angeles. 149. He was buried in the Pacific View Memorial Park Cemetery in Corona del Mar, Newport Beach. According to his son Patrick and his grandson Matthew Munoz, who was a priest in the California Diocese of Orange, Wayne converted to Roman Catholicism shortly before his death. 150 151 152 He requested that his tombstone read Fio, fuerte y formal, a Spanish epitaph Wayne described as meaning ugly, strong, and dignified. 153 His grave, which was unmarked for 20 years, has been marked since 1999 with the quotation, "Tomorrow is the most important thing in life. Comes into us at midnight very clean. It's perfect when it arrives and it puts itself in our hands. It hopes we've learned something from yesterday." 154 155 Legacy. Acting evaluation. Wayne in Rio Bravo, 1959. In 1974, film critic Charles Champlin wrote of Wayne, "Wayne is a motion picture actor, first, last and always, who defined as powerfully as anyone else what that means. From the lean and intense early days, in those low-cost dusters which still play on morning television, Wayne has had a presence which got through the lenses and shutters and onto the film undiminished." 10 John Ford said of him, "He's not something out of a book, governed by acting rules. He portrays John Wayne, a rugged American guy. He's not one of those method actors, like they send out here from drama schools in New York. He's real, perfectly natural." Lee Strasberg observed that Wayne was similar to fellow actors Spencer Tracy and Gary Cooper, who try not to act but be themselves. Wayne thought of himself as a reactor rather than an actor, and felt that the difference between good and bad acting was in acting and reacting. He explained this difference: in a bad picture, you see them acting all over the place. In a good picture, they react in a logical way to a situation they're in, so the audience can identify with the actors. When asked about his approach to acting, Wayne commented, "I read dramatic lines undramatically and react to situations normally. This is not as simple as it sounds. I've spent a major portion of my life trying to do it well and I am not past learning it yet." Much like many actors of his generation, Wayne disliked method acting, and once said of them, "Let those actors who pick their noses get all the dialogue, just give me the close-up of reaction." 156. Howard Hawks, who directed him in 5 films, felt that after losing one of his lungs, Wayne became a much better actor. Hawks explained, "Because of the lung Wayne lost, he reads his lines differently. He pauses in the strangest places simply because he hasn't got the breath he used to have. This device is terribly effective, because you keep your eyes on him and wait for him to finish, because you don't know what's coming next." Raoul Walsh noted, "Wayne underacts, and it's mighty effective, not because he tries to underact, it's a hard thing to do if you try, but because he can't overact." 157. Despite his popularity at the box office, Wayne was often criticized for playing the same type of character during most of his career. In a 1969 interview with Roger Ebert, Wayne remarked, "Of course, they give me that John Wayne stuff so much, claim I always play the same role. Seems like nobody remembers how different the fellows were in The Quiet Man or Iwo Jima, or Yellow Ribbon, where I was 35 playing a man of 65. To stay a star, you have to bring along some of your own personality. Thousands of good actors can carry a scene, but a star has to carry the scene and still, without intruding, allow some of his character into it." 158. Gene Hackman said that Wayne was one of the best actors ever. "You must admire how really good he was as an actor, in command of the scene and with such great charisma." 159. Awards, celebrations, and landmarks. Irene Dunne, Wayne, Rosalind Russell, and James Stewart at the premiere of How the West Was Won, 1962. Wayne's enduring status as an iconic American was formally recognized by the U.S. government in the form of the 2 highest civilian decorations. On his 72nd birthday on May 26, 1979, Wayne was awarded the Congressional Gold Medal. Hollywood figures and American leaders from across the political spectrum, including Maureen O'Hara, Elizabeth Taylor, Frank Sinatra, Mike Frankovich, Katharine Hepburn, Omar Bradley, Gregory Peck, Robert Stack, James Arness, and Kirk Douglas, testified to Congress in support of the award. Robert Aldrich, president of the Directors Guild of America, made a particularly notable statement. "It is important for you to know that I am a registered Democrat, and to my knowledge, share none of the political views espoused by Duke. However, whether he is ill-disposed or healthy, John Wayne is far beyond the normal political sharpshooting in this community. Because of his courage, his dignity, his integrity, and because of his talents as an actor, his strength as a leader, his warmth as a human being throughout his illustrious career, he is entitled to a unique spot in our hearts and minds. In this industry, we often judge people, sometimes unfairly, by asking whether they have paid their dues. John Wayne has paid his dues over and over, and I'm proud to consider him a friend and am very much in favor of my government recognizing in some important fashion the contribution that Mr. Wayne has made." 160. Wayne was posthumously awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom on June 9, 1980, by President Jimmy Carter. He had attended Carter's inaugural ball in 1977 as a member of the Loyal Opposition, as he described it. In 1998, he was awarded the Naval Heritage Award by the U.S. Navy Memorial Foundation for his support of the Navy and military during his film career. In 1999, the American Film Institute named Wayne 13th among the greatest male screen legends of classic Hollywood cinema. In the essay John Wayne, A Love Song, Joan Didion recalls the first time she saw Wayne in a movie. It was there, that summer of 1943 while the hot wind blew outside, that I first saw John Wayne. Saw the walk, heard the voice. Heard him tell the girl in a picture called War of the Wildcats that he would build her a house, at the bend in the river where the cottonwoods grow. As it happened, I did not grow up to be kind of woman who is the heroine in a western, and although the men I have known have had many virtues and have taken me to live in many places I have come to love, they have never been John Wayne, and they have never taken me to that bend in the river where the cottonwoods grow. Deep in that part of my heart where the artificial rain forever falls, that is still the line I want to hear. When John Wayne rode through my childhood, and perhaps through yours, he determined forever the shapes of certain of our dreams. It did not seem possible that such a man could fall ill, could carry within him that most inexplicable and ungovernable of diseases. 161. Wayne's most enduring image is that of the displaced loner uncomfortable with the very civilization he is helping to establish and preserve. At his first appearance, we usually sense a very private person with some wound, loss, or grievance from the past. At his very best he is much closer to a tragic vision of life, projecting the kind of mystery associated with great acting. Film historian Andrew Sarris, 1979, 162. Various public locations are named in honor of Wayne, including the John Wayne Airport in Orange County, California, where a 9-foot, 2.7 m, bronze equestrian statue of him stands at the entrance. 138 The John Wayne Marina 163 for which Wayne bequeathed the land, near Sequim, Washington, John Wayne Elementary School, PS 380, in Brooklyn, New York, which boasts a 38-foot, 12 m, mosaic mural commissioned by New York artist Knox Martin. 164 entitled John Wayne and the American Frontier. 165. And over 100 miles, 160 kilometers, named the John Wayne Pioneer Trail in Washington's Iron Horse State Park. A larger-than-life-sized bronze statue of Wayne atop a horse was erected at the corner of La Cienega Boulevard and Wilshire Boulevard in Beverly Hills, California, at the former offices of the Great Western Savings and Loan Corporation, for which Wayne had made a number of commercials. In the city of Maricopa, Arizona, part of Arizona State Route 347 is named John Wayne Parkway, which runs through the center of town. In 2006, friends of Wayne and his former Arizona business partner, Louis Johnson, inaugurated the Louis and the Duke Classics events benefiting the John Wayne Cancer Foundation. 166 and the American Cancer Society. 167-168 The weekend-long event each fall in Casa Grande, Arizona, includes a golf tournament, an auction of John Wayne memorabilia, and a team roping competition. 167. Several celebrations took place on May 26, 2007, the centennial of Wayne's birth. A celebration at the John Wayne birthplace in Winterset, Iowa, included chuck wagon suppers, concerts by Michael Martin Murphey and Riders in the Sky, a Wild West review in the style of Buffalo Bill's Wild West show, and a cowboy symposium with Wayne's co-stars, producers, and costumers. Wayne's films ran continuously at the local theater. Ground was broken for the new John Wayne Birthplace Museum and Learning Center at a ceremony consisting of over 30 of Wayne's family members, including Melinda Wayne Munoz, Isa, Ethan, and Marissa Wayne. Later that year, California Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger and First Lady Maria Shriver inducted Wayne into the California Hall of Fame, located at the California Museum in Sacramento. 169. In 2016, Republican Assemblyman Matthew Harper proposed marking May 26 as John Wayne Day in California. 170 This resolution was struck down by a vote of 35 to 20, due to Wayne's views on race and his support of controversial organizations such as the John Birch Society and the House Un-American Activities Committee. 171. American icon. Wayne and James Stewart in The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, 1962. Wayne rose beyond the typical recognition for a famous actor to that of an enduring icon who symbolized and communicated American values and ideals. 172 Using the power of communication through silent films and radio, Wayne was instrumental in creating a national culture from disparate areas of the U.S., and made the creation of a national hero possible. 173 By the middle of his career, Wayne had developed a larger-than-life image, and as his career progressed, he selected roles that would not compromise his off-screen image. 174 Wayne embodied the image of strong American masculinity and rugged individualism in both his films and his life. 175 At a party in 1957, Wayne confronted actor Kirk Douglas about the latter's decision to play the role of Vincent van Gogh in the film Lust for Life, saying, "Christ, Kirk, how can you play a part like that? There's so goddamn few of us left. We got to play strong, tough characters. Not these weak queers." 176 However, actor Marlon Brando was notably critical of Wayne's public persona and of the cultural insensitivity of Wayne's characters, arguing on the Dick Cavett Show that, "We Americans like to see ourselves as perhaps John Wayne sees us. That we are a country that stands for freedom, for rightness, for justice," before adding that it just simply doesn't apply. 177-178. Wayne's rise to being the quintessential movie war hero began to take shape 4 years after World War II, when Sands of Iwo Jima, 1949, was released. His footprints at Grauman's Chinese Theater in Hollywood were laid in concrete that contained sand from Iwo Jima. 179. His status grew so large and legendary that when Japanese Emperor Hirohito visited the United States in 1975, he asked to meet John Wayne, the symbolic representation of his country's former enemy. 180. Likewise, when Soviet leader Nikita Khrushchev visited the United States in 1959, he made 2 requests: to visit Disneyland and meet Wayne. 181. In the Motion Picture Herald Top 10 Money-Making Western Stars poll, Wayne was listed in 1936 and 1939. 182. He appeared in the similar box office poll in 1939 and 1940. 183. While these 2 polls are really an indication only of the popularity of series stars, Wayne also appeared in the Top 10 Money Makers poll of all films from 1949 to 1957 and 1958 to 1974, taking first place in 1950, 1951, 1954, and 1971. With a total of 25 years on the list, Wayne has more appearances than any other star, surpassing Clint Eastwood, 21, who is in second place. 184. Wayne is the only actor to appear in every edition of the annual Harris Poll of Most Popular Film Actors, and the only actor to appear on the list after his death. Wayne was in the top 10 in this poll for 19 consecutive years, starting in 1994, 15 years after his death. 185. Mylene Demonget declared in a 2015 filmed interview, "Gary Cooper was sublime, there I have to say, now he was part of the stars, Gary Cooper, Cary Grant, John Wayne, those great Americans who I've met really were unbelievable guys, there aren't any like them anymore." 186. John Wayne Cancer Foundation. The John Wayne Cancer Foundation was founded in 1985 in honor of John Wayne, after his family granted the use of his name, and limited funding, for the continued fight against cancer. 187. The foundation's mission is to bring courage, strength, and grit to the fight against cancer. 187. The foundation provides funds for innovative programs that improve cancer patient care, including research, education, awareness, and support. 187. Dispute with Duke University. Newport Beach, California-based John Wayne Enterprises, a business operated by Wayne's heirs, sells products, including Kentucky Straight Bourbon, bearing the Duke brand and using Wayne's picture. When the company tried to trademark the image appearing on one of the bottles, Duke University in Durham, North Carolina, filed a notice of opposition. According to court documents, Duke has tried 3 times since 2005 to stop the company from trademarking the name. The company sought a declaration permitting registration of their trademark. The company's complaint filed in federal court said the university did not own the word Duke in all contexts for all purposes. The university's official position was not to object provided Wayne's image appeared with the name. 188. On September 30, 2014, Orange County, California federal judge David Carter dismissed the company's suit, deciding the plaintiffs had chosen the wrong jurisdiction. 189. Filmography. Main article, John Wayne Filmography. Portrait of Wayne, 1952. Between 1926 and 1977, Wayne appeared in over 170 films. According to Quigley polling, Wayne was named the top money maker, as of 2005. 190. Missed roles. Wayne turned down the lead role in the 1952 film High Noon because he felt the film's story was an allegory against blacklisting, which he actively supported. In a 1971 interview, Wayne said he considered High Noon the most un-American thing I've ever seen in my whole life, and that he would never regret having helped run screenwriter Carl Foreman, who was later blacklisted out of the country. 25. 142. An urban legend has it that in 1955, Wayne turned down the role of Matt Dillon in the long-running television series Gunsmoke and recommended James Arness, instead. While he did suggest Arness for the part and introduced him in a prologue to the first episode, no film star of Wayne's stature would have considered a television role at the time. 191. Terry Southern's biographer Lee Hill wrote that the role of Major T.J. King Kong in Dr. Strangelove, 1964, was originally written with Wayne in mind, and that Stanley Kubrick offered him the part after Peter Sellers injured his ankle during filming. He immediately turned it down. 192. While Sellers went on to play 3 other roles in the film, Slim Pickens played Kong. In 1966, Wayne accepted the role of Major Reisman in The Dirty Dozen, 1967, and asked Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer for some script changes, but eventually withdrew from the project to make The Green Berets. He was replaced by Lee Marvin. 193. Though Wayne actively campaigned for the title role in Dirty Harry, 1971, Warner Brothers decided that at 63 he was too old, and cast the 41-year-old Clint Eastwood. 194. In the early 70s, several years before the film was made, Wayne was offered the lead role in Michael Cimino's Heaven's Gate, 1980, then under the title The Johnson County War. Wayne would later present the Best Picture prize to Cimino at the 51st Academy Awards for The Deer Hunter, 1978. 195. Director Peter Bogdanovich and screenwriter Larry McMurtry pitched a film in 1972 called The Streets of Laredo that would co-star Wayne along with James Stewart and Henry Fonda. They conceived it as a western that would bring the final curtain down on Hollywood westerns. Stewart and Fonda both agreed to appear in it, but after long consideration, Wayne turned it down, citing his feeling that his character was more underdeveloped and uninteresting than those of his co-stars, which was largely based on John Ford's recommendation after perusing the script. The project was shelved for some 20 years, until McMurtry rewrote and expanded the original screenplay co-written with Bogdanovich to make the novel and subsequent TV miniseries Lonesome Dove, with Tommy Lee Jones in Wayne's role and Robert Duvall playing the part originally written for Stewart in the extremely popular miniseries. 196, 197, 198. Mel Brooks offered Wayne the role of the Waco Kid, eventually played by Gene Wilder, in Blazing Saddles, 1974. After reading the script, Wayne declined, fearing the dialogue was too dirty for his family-friendly image, but told Brooks that he would be first in line to see the movie. 199, 200. Steven Spielberg offered both Wayne and Charlton Heston the role of Major General Joseph Stilwell in the film 1941, with Wayne also considered for a cameo in it. After reading the script, Wayne decided not to participate due to ill health, but also urged Spielberg not to pursue the project. Both Wayne and Heston felt the film was unpatriotic. Spielberg recalled, "Wayne was really curious and so I sent him the script. He called me the next day and said he felt it was a very un-American movie, and I shouldn't waste my time making it. He said, you know, that was an important war, and you're making fun of a war that cost thousands of lives at Pearl Harbor. Don't joke about World War II." Maureen O'Hara, née Fitzsimmons, August 17, 1920 – October 24, 2015, was an Irish-born naturalized American actress who became successful in Hollywood from the 1940s through to the 1960s. She was a natural redhead who was known for playing passionate but sensible heroines, often in westerns and adventure films. She worked with director John Ford and longtime friend John Wayne on numerous projects. O'Hara was born into a Catholic family and raised in Dublin, Ireland. She aspired to become an actress from a very young age. She trained with the Rathmines Theatre Company from the age of 10 and at the Abbey Theatre from the age of 14. She was given a screen test, which was deemed unsatisfactory, but Charles Laughton saw potential in her and arranged for her to co-star with him in Alfred Hitchcock's Jamaica Inn in 1939. Laughton insisted that she change her surname from Fitzsimmons against her wishes, and she became O'Hara. She moved to Hollywood the same year to appear with him in the production of The Hunchback of Notre Dame, and was given a contract by RKO Pictures. From there, she went on to enjoy a long and highly successful career, and acquired the nickname the Queen of Technicolor. O'Hara appeared in films such as How Green Was My Valley, 1941, her first collaboration with John Ford, The Black Swan with Tyrone Power, 1942, The Spanish Main, 1945, Sinbad the Sailor, 1947, the Christmas classic Miracle on 34th Street, 1947, with John Payne and Natalie Wood, and Comanche Territory, 1950. O'Hara made her first film with John Wayne, the actor with whom she is most closely associated, in Rio Grande, 1950. This was followed by The Quiet Man, 1952, The Wings of Eagles, 1957, McLintock, 1963, and Big Jake, 1971. Such was her strong chemistry with Wayne that many assumed they were married or in a relationship. In the 1960s, O'Hara increasingly turned to more motherly roles as she aged, appearing in films such as The Deadly Companions, 1961, The Parent Trap, 1961, and The Rare Breed, 1966. She retired from the industry in 1971, but returned 20 years later to appear with John Candy in Only the Lonely, 1991. In the late 1970s, O'Hara helped run her third husband Charles F. Blair Jr.'s flying business in St. Croix in the United States Virgin Islands, and edited a magazine, but later sold them to spend more time in Glengariff in Ireland. She was married 3 times, and had 1 daughter, Bronwyn, with her second husband. Her autobiography, Tis Herself, published in 2004, became a New York Times bestseller. In 2009, The Guardian named her one of the best actors never to have received an Academy Award nomination. In November 2014, she was presented with an honorary Academy Award with the inscription to Maureen O'Hara, one of Hollywood's brightest stars, whose inspiring performances glowed with passion, warmth, and strength. In 2020, she was ranked number 1 on the Irish Times list of Ireland's greatest film actors. 3. Early life and education. O'Hara with her mother, Marguerite Fitzsimmons, in 1948. Born on August 17, 1924, O'Hara began life as Maureen Fitzsimmons on Beechwood Avenue in the Dublin suburb of Ranelagh. 5. She stated that she was born into the most remarkable and eccentric family I could have possibly hoped for. 6. She was the second eldest of 6 children of Charles and Marguerite, née Lilburn, Fitzsimmons, and the only red-headed child in the family. 7. Her father was in the clothing business and bought into Shamrock Rovers Football Club, a team O'Hara supported from childhood. 9. O'Hara inherited her singing voice from her mother. 7. A former operatic contralto and successful women's clothier, who in her younger years was widely considered to have been one of Ireland's most beautiful women. She noted that whenever her mother left the house, men would leave their houses just so they could catch a glimpse of her in the street. 4. O'Hara's siblings were Peggy, the eldest, and younger Charles, Flory, Margot, and Jimmy. Peggy dedicated her life to a religious order, becoming a sister of charity. 4. I was a blunt child, blunt almost to the point of rudeness. I told the truth and shamed all the devils. I didn't take discipline very well. I would never be slapped in school. If a teacher had slapped me, I would have bitten her. I guess I was a bold, bad child, but it was exciting. When I went to the Dominican college later on, I did not have beaux as the other girls did. There was one lad who followed me around for 2 years. He told me at last that he never once dared to speak to me because I looked as though I would bite his head off if I did. O'Hara on her childhood personality. 10. O'Hara earned the nickname Baby Elephant for being a pudgy infant. 4. A tomboy, she enjoyed fishing in the River Dodder, riding horses, swimming and soccer. 11. And would play boys' games and climb trees. 7. O'Hara was so keen on soccer that at one point, she pressed her father to found a women's team, and professed that Glennon Park, then home ground of Shamrock Rovers FC, became like a second home. 11. She enjoyed fighting, and trained in judo as a teenager. 12. She later admitted that she was jealous of boys in her youth and the freedom they had, and that they could steal apples from orchards and not get into trouble. 13. O'Hara first attended the John Street West Girls' School near Thomas Street in Dublin's Liberties area. 14. She began dancing at the age of 5. 4. When a fortune teller predicted that she would become rich and famous, and she would boast to friends as they sat in her back garden that she would become the most famous actress in the world. Her enthusiastic family fully supported the idea. 15. When she recited a poem on stage in school at the age of 6, O'Hara immediately felt an attraction to performing in front of an audience. From that age she trained in drama, music, and dance along with her siblings at the ENA Mary Burke School of Drama and Elocution in Dublin. 10. Their affinity with the arts prompted O'Hara to refer to the family as the Irish Von Trapp family. 4. O'Hara, right, with sisters Margot and Flory in 1947. At the age of 10, O'Hara joined the Rathmines Theatre Company and began working in amateur theatre in the evenings after her lessons. 16. One of her earliest roles was Robin Hood in a Christmas pantomime. 10. O'Hara's dream at this time was to be a stage actress. By the age of 12, O'Hara had reached the height of 5 feet 6 inches, 1.68 m, and it worried her mother for a while that she would become the tallest girl in Ireland, as Maureen's father was 6 feet 4 inches, 1.93 m. She expressed relief when O'Hara only grew another 2 inches. 17. At the age of 14, O'Hara joined the Abbey Theatre. Though she was mentored by playwright Lennox Robinson, she found her time at the theatre disappointing. 17. In 1935, at the age of 15, she won the first dramatic prize of the National Competition of the Performing Arts 7, the Dublin Phase Award, for her performance as Portia in The Merchant of Venice. 17. She trained as a shorthand typist, working for Crumlin Laundry before joining Eveready Battery Company, where she worked as a typist and bookkeeper. 18. She later put her skills to use when she typed the script of The Quiet Man for John Ford. 7. In 1936, she became the youngest pupil to graduate from the Guildhall School of Music at the time, and the following year, she won the Dawn Beauty competition, winning £50. 17. As she matured into a young woman, O'Hara, like many actresses, became increasingly self-conscious, which affected her for a while. In one performance, which was watched by her father from the back of the theatre, O'Hara sensed there was someone out front watching me, perhaps critically. My arms felt like lead. I gave a rotten show that night. I grew up with the terrible feeling that I was being laughed at. 19. Film career. Main article, Maureen O'Hara filmography. 1937-1940, early career. On the screen was a girl. She looked at least 35, she was overdone up, very made up face, and her hair in an overground style, but just for a split perfect second light was on her face and you could see as the girl turned her head around your extraordinarily beautiful profile, which was absolutely invisible among all your makeup. Well, Mr. Palmer and I sent for you and you came and blew into the office like a hurricane. You had a tweed suit on with hair sticking out and coming from Ireland. You blew into the office and said in Irish accent, "What you want with me?" I took you out for lunch and I never forgot when I asked you why you wanted to be an actress. I'll never forget your reply. You said, when I was a child I used to go down the garden, talk to the flowers and pretend I was the flower talking back to myself. And you had to be a pretty nice girl and had to be a pretty good actress too. And heavens knows you're both. Charles Laughton addressing O'Hara with his fond memories of spotting her at the age of 17. At the age of 17, O'Hara was offered her first major role at the Abbey Theatre but was distracted by the attentions of actor-singer Harry Richman. Richman arranged with the manager of the Gresham Hotel in Dublin to meet her at the hotel while she was dining with her family. He proposed that she go to Elstree Studios for a screen test and become a film actress. O'Hara arrived in London shortly afterwards with her mother. 19 During the screen test, the studio adorned her in a gold lame dress with flapping sleeves like wings. 20 And heavy makeup with an ornate hairstyle, which was deemed to be far from satisfactory. O'Hara detested the audition, during which she had to walk in and pick up a telephone. She recalled thinking to herself, "My God, get me back to the Abbey." 19 Charles Laughton later saw the test and, despite the overdone makeup and costume, was intrigued, paying particular notice to her large and expressive eyes. 7 After seeking the approval of his business partner Eric Palmer 21 they arranged to meet O'Hara through a talent agency run by Connie Chapman and Veer Barker. 22 Laughton was impressed with O'Hara, particularly by her lack of nerves and refusal to read an extract upon his request unprepared, during which she said, "I am very sorry but absolutely no." 22 She was offered an initial 7-year contract with their new company, Mayflower Pictures. 21 Though her family were shocked at her being given a contract so young, they accepted, and O'Hara travelled across Ireland in celebration before arriving back in London to commence her film career. 23 O'Hara later stated that "I owe my whole career to Mr. Palmer." 7. O'Hara with brothers James O'Hara, left, and Charles B. Fitzsimmons, right, in 1954. O'Hara made her screen debut in Walter Ford's Kicking the Moon Around, 1938, although she did not consider it a part of her filmography. Richman had introduced her to Ford at Elstree Studios, but as she was not cast in the film in a notable role, she agreed to deliver one line in it as a favor to Richman for helping with her screen test. 24 Laughton arranged for her to appear in the low-budget musical My Irish Molly, 1938, the only film she made under her real name, Maureen Fitzsimmons. In the film, she plays a woman named Eileen O'Shea, who rescues an orphan girl named Molly. 24 Biographer Aubrey Malone stated of it, "One could argue that O'Hara never looked as enticing as she does in Little Miss Molly, even if she isn't Maureen O'Hara quite yet. She wears no makeup, and there's no Hollywood glamour, but despite, or because of, that, she is rapturously beautiful. Her accent is thick, which is perhaps why she didn't mention the film much. It also looks as if it were made in the 1920s rather than the 1930s, so primitive are the sets and characters." Malone added that though the lot was ham-fisted, it is a quaint film which O'Hara scholars should view if only to see early evidence of her natural instinct for dramatic timing and scene interpretation. 23. O'Hara's first major film role was that of Mary Yellen in Jamaica in 1939, directed by Alfred Hitchcock and CO starring Laughton. 25 O'Hara portrayed the innkeeper's niece, an orphan who goes to live with her aunt and uncle at a Cornish tavern. 26 A heroine which she describes as torn between the love of her family and her love for a lawman in disguise. Laughton insisted that she change her name to the shorter O'Mara or O'Hara, and she eventually decided on the latter after expressing contempt at both. 27 When she said "I like Maureen Fitzsimmons and I want to keep it," Laughton replied with, "Very well, you're Maureen O'Hara." O'Hara would later say that nobody would ever get Fitzsimmons straight. 28 O'Hara noted that Laughton had always wanted a daughter of his own, and treated her as such. 29 And she later stated that Laughton's death in 1962 was like losing a parent. She worked well under Hitchcock, professing to have never experienced the strange feeling of detachment with Hitchcock that many other actors claimed to have felt while working with him. 27 On the contrary, Laughton was engaged in a bitter battle with Hitchcock throughout the production and resented many of Hitchcock's ideas, including changing the nature of the villain from the novel. 30 Though Jamaica Inn is generally seen by critics and the director himself as one of his weakest films, 31 O'Hara was praised, with one critic stating the newcomer, Maureen O'Hara is charming to look at and distinct promise as an actress. Seeing the film was an eye-opener for O'Hara and change in self-perception, having always seen herself as a tomboy and realizing that on screen she was a woman of great beauty to others. When she returned to Ireland briefly after the film was completed, it dawned on her that life would never be the same again, and she was hurt when she attempted to make pleasant conversation to some local girls and they rejected her advances, considering her to be very arrogant. 32. O'Hara in The Hunchback of Notre Dame, 1939. Laughton was so pleased with O'Hara's performance in Jamaica Inn that she was cast opposite him in The Hunchback of Notre Dame, 1939, for RKO in Hollywood. She boarded the RMS Queen Mary with him and her mother to New York, and then traveled by train to Hollywood. 33 O'Hara's agent, Lou Wasserman, arranged for a pay increase from $80 a week to $700 a week. 34 As the new face of RKO, she garnered much attention from the Hollywood press and society before the film was even released, something that made her uncomfortable, as she felt that she was being viewed as a novelty and people were making a fuss over me because of something I hadn't yet done, something they just thought I might do. 35 O'Hara portrayed Esmeralda. 36 A gypsy dancer who is imprisoned and later sentenced to death by the Parisian authorities. 37 Director William Dieterle initially showed concern that O'Hara was too tall and disliked her wavy hair, asking for her to step under a shower to straighten it out. 35 Filming commenced in the San Fernando Valley, at a time when it was experiencing its hottest summer in its history. O'Hara described it as a physically demanding shoot, due to the heavy makeup and costume requirements, and recalls that she gasped at Lawton in makeup as Quasimodo, remarking, "Good God, Charles. Is that really you?" 38 O'Hara insisted on doing her own stunts from the outset, and for the scene in which the hangman places a noose around her neck, no safety nets were used. The film was a commercial success, taking $3 million at the box office. O'Hara was generally praised for her performance, though some critics thought that Lawton stole the show. One critic thought that was the strength of the film, writing, "The contrast between Lawton as the pathetic hunchback and O'Hara as the fresh-faced, tenderly solicitous gypsy girl is Hollywood teaming at its most inspired." 39. After the completion of The Hunchback of Notre Dame, World War II began, and Lawton, realizing his company could no longer film in London, sold O'Hara's contract to RKO. 41 O'Hara later professed that "This broke my heart, I felt completely abandoned in a strange and faraway place." 42 She next featured in John Farrow's A Bill of Divorcement, 1940, a remake of George Cukor's 1932 film. O'Hara portrayed Sidney Fairchild, who was played by Katharine Hepburn in the original, in a film which she considered to have had a screenplay which was mediocre at best. 43 The production became difficult for O'Hara after Farrow reportedly made suggestive comments to her and began stalking her at home. Once he realized that O'Hara was not interested in him sexually, he began bullying her on set. O'Hara punched him in the jaw one day, which put an end to the mistreatment. 44 O'Hara's performance was criticized by reviewers, with the critic from the New York Sun writing that she lacked the intensity and desperation it must have, nor does she seem to have a sparkle of humor. 41 She next found a role as an aspiring ballerina who performs with a dance troupe in Dance, Girl, Dance, 1940. She considered it to have been a physically demanding film, and felt intimidated by Lucille Ball during the production as she had been a former Ziegfeld and Goldwyn girl and was a superior dancer. 45 The two remained friends for many years after the film was completed. 46. 1941-1943, Hollywood breakthrough. O'Hara in How Green Was My Valley, 1941. O'Hara began 1941 by appearing in They Met in Argentina, RKO's answer to Down Argentine Way, 1940. O'Hara later declared that she knew it was going to be a stinker, terrible script, bad director, preposterous plot, forgettable music. 47 She grew increasingly frustrated with the direction of her career at this time. Ida Zeitlin wrote that O'Hara had reached a pitch of despair where she was about ready to throw in the towel, to break her contract, to collapse against the stone wall of indifference and howl like a baby wolf. 48 She pleaded with her agent for a role, however small, in John Ford's upcoming film How Green Was My Valley, 1941, at 20th Century Fox. 49 A film about a close, hard-working Welsh mining family living in the heart of the South Wales Valleys in the 19th century. 50 The film, which won the Academy Award for Best Picture. 51 began an artistic collaboration with Ford that would span 20 years and 5 feature films. 52. Her substantial role as Ong Herod, which she was given without a full screen test. 49 Beating Katharine Hepburn and Gene Tierney to the part. 53 Proved to be her breakthrough role. 51 It was made possible by a change to her contract with RKO, in which Fox bought the rights to feature O'Hara in one film each year. 54 Ford developed a nickname for her, Rosebud, 7 and the two developed a long but turbulent friendship, with O'Hara often visiting Ford and his wife Mary in social visits and spending time aboard his yacht Mariner. 55 Despite this, Ford was an unpredictable character with a mean streak, and in one instance he punched O'Hara in the jaw for some unknown reason, and she only took it from him because she wanted to show him she could take a punch like a man. 56 The production of How Green Was My Valley was originally intended to be shot in the Ronda Valley, but due to the war it had to be filmed in the San Fernando Valley, on a $1.25 million set, which took 150 builders 6 months to complete. 53. O'Hara recalled that Ford would allow her to improvise extensively during the filming, but was very much the boss, commenting that nobody dared step out of line, which gave the performers a sense of security. 57 O'Hara became such good friends with Anna Lee during the shooting that she later named her daughter Bronwyn after Lee's character. 58 The film was lauded by the critics, and was nominated for 10 Academy Awards, winning 3, including Best Picture. 59 Both O'Hara and CO star Walter Pidgeon, who played the minister, were praised for their performances, with Variety writing that Maureen O'Hara splendid as the object of his unrequited love, who marries the mine owner's son out of pique. 60. Film historian Joseph McBride considered O'Hara's performance to have been the most emotionally powerful he'd seen since Catherine Hepburn in Mary of Scotland, 1936. 59 O'Hara stated that her favorite scene in the film took place outside the church after her character gets married, remarking, "I make my way down the steps to the carriage waiting below, the wind catches my veil and fans it out in a perfect circle all the way around my face. Then it floats straight up above my head and points to the heavens. It's breathtaking." 61. Tyrone Power and O'Hara in the trailer for The Black Swan, 1942. Malone notes that when the United States entered World War II in 1941, many of the better actors became involved in the war effort and O'Hara struggled to find good CO stars. He points out that she increasingly starred in adventure pictures, which allowed her to develop her acting and keep her profile high in Hollywood. 62 O'Hara had next intended appearing opposite Tyrone Power in Son of Fury, the story of Benjamin Blake, but was hospitalized in early 1942, during which she had her appendix and 2 ovarian cysts removed at Reno Hospital. Producer Zanuck scoffed at the operation, thinking it was an excuse for a break. He passed it off as probably a fragment left over from an abortion, which deeply offended her, as a devout Catholic. 63. O'Hara instead starred in the Technicolor war picture, To the Shores of Tripoli, her first Technicolor picture and first on-screen partnership with John Payne, in which she portrayed Navy Nurse Lieutenant Mary Carter. 64 Though the film was a considerable commercial success, becoming a benchmark for service pictures of the era, O'Hara later commented that she couldn't understand why the quality of his, Bruce Humberstone's, pictures never seemed to match their impressive box office receipts. 64 Malone wrote that nobody in the film seemed to have lived life. The characters' emotions, like their uniforms, seemed too streamlined. 65 O'Hara next played an unconventional role as a timid socialite who joins the army as a cook in Henry Hathaway's 10 Gentlemen from West Point, 1942, which tells the fictional story of the first class of the United States Military Academy in the early 19th century. The film was disagreeable to O'Hara because Payne dropped out and was replaced by George Montgomery, whom she found positively loathsome. 66 Montgomery attempted to make a pass at her during the production, prolonging his kiss with her after the director had yelled cut. 67. O'Hara in 10 Gentlemen from West Point, 1942. Later that year, O'Hara starred opposite Power, George Sanders, Laird Krieger, and Anthony Quinn in Henry King's swashbuckler The Black Swan. O'Hara recalled that it was everything you could want in a lavish pirate picture, a magnificent ship with thundering cannons, a dashing hero battling menacing villains, sword fights, fabulous costumes. She found it exhilarating working with Power, who was renowned for his wicked sense of humor. 68 O'Hara grew very concerned about one scene in the picture in which she is thrown overboard in her underwear by Power, and sent a warning letter home to Ireland in advance. 69 She refused to take her wedding ring off in one scene which resulted in screen adjustments to make it look like a dinner ring. 70 Though the film was praised by critics and is seen as one of the period's most enjoyable adventure films, the critic from the New York Times thought O'Hara's character lacked depth, commenting that Maureen O'Hara is brunette and beautiful, which is all the part requires. 71. O'Hara played the love interest of Henry Fonda in the 1943 war picture Immortal Sergeant. O'Hara noted that Fonda was studying for his service entry exams at the time and had his head in books between takes, and that 20th Century Fox publicized one of the last love scenes between them in the film as Fonda's last screen kiss before entering the war. 72 She next portrayed a European school teacher opposite George Sanders and Charles Laughton, in their last film together, in Jean Renoir's This Land Is Mine for RKO. 73 At the end of a court case in the film, during a hearty speech by Laughton, O'Hara is shown teary-eyed on screen for a prolonged period. 74 Malone thought her performance was effective, both crying and smiling, though considered Renoir to have overdone the film and confused the audience as a result. 75. Later, she had a role in Richard Wallace's The Fallen Sparrow opposite John Garfield. 76 Whom she described as my shortest leading man, an outspoken communist and a real sweetheart. 72 Malone notes though that despite them getting on very well, Garfield did not rate her as an actress. He considers This Land Is Mine and The Fallen Sparrow to have been 2 important pictures in O'Hara's career, adding to her growing prestige in the film industry, helping her crawl out from the gimcrack melodrama of adventure films. 77. 1944-1949, The Queen of Technicolor. Ms. O'Hara was called the Queen of Technicolor because when that film process first came into use, nothing seemed to show off its splendor better than her rich red hair, bright green eyes and flawless peaches and cream complexion. One critic praised her in an otherwise negative review of the 1950 film Comanche Territory with the sentiment framed in Technicolor, Miss O'Hara somehow seems more significant than a setting Sunday. Even the creators of the process claimed her as its best advertisement. Anita Gates of the New York Times on O'Hara as the Queen of Technicolor. 78. Although O'Hara became known as the Queen of Technicolor, like Rhonda Fleming, she professed to dislike the process because it required special cameras and intense light that burned her eyes and gave her clique eye. 79 She believed that the term negatively affected her career, as most people viewed her solely as a beauty who looked good on film rather than as a talented actress. 80 In 1944 O'Hara was cast opposite Joel McCrea in William A. Wellman's biographical western Buffalo Bill. 81 Though O'Hara did not think that McCrea was rugged enough for the part of William F. Buffalo Bill Cody, and according to Malone gave her a little to work off, it did well at the box office. 82 Contrary to O'Hara's opinion 83 Variety was highly praising of the film, describing it as a super western and often a tearjerker, and thought that McCrea was convincing in the part and that O'Hara's own performance was satisfactory. 84. O'Hara with Paul Henriette in The Spanish Main, 1945. In 1945, O'Hara starred opposite Paul Henriette in The Spanish Main as feisty noblewoman Contessa Francesca, the daughter of a Mexican viceroy. 85 O'Hara described it as one of my more decorative roles, 86 as her character is a particularly aggressive one among the men on a ship, and during the course of the film her face is smothered in chimney soot. 87 O'Hara almost did not win the role when another actress falsely told RKO executive Joe Nolan that she was as big as a horse after giving birth to a daughter in 1944. 88 Around this time an actress named Catherine also falsely accused O'Hara of making sexual advances towards her in an elevator, which she believed was a way for the actress to gain attention at the start of her career. 89 During the production of The Spanish Main, O'Hara was visited by John Ford, who was initially turned away for being shabbily dressed, but was later admitted. He informed her about the project that would become The Quiet Man, 1952. Malone notes that in the film O'Hara shows her determination not to leave her sexuality at the birthing stool, commenting that she looks deliciously fragrant in the splashy histrionics on view here. In RKO's first film in the three-color Technicolor process 88 O'Hara became a naturalized citizen of the United States on January 24, 1946-7 and held dual citizenship with the United States and her native Ireland. 90. In the same year, she portrayed an actress with a fatal heart condition in Walter Lang's Sentimental Journey. A commercially successful production, O'Hara described it as a rip your heart out tearjerker that reduced my agents and the toughest brass at Fox to mush when they saw it. 80 It was poorly received by critics, and was later declared by Harvard as the worst film of all time. One critic attacked O'Hara as just another one of those precious Hollywood juvenile products who in workday life would benefit from a good hiding, while Bosley Crowther dismissed the film as a compound of hackneyed situations, maudlin dialogue, and preposterously bad acting. 91 In Gregory Ratoff's musical Do You Love Me, O'Hara portrayed a prim, bespectacled music school dean who transforms herself into a desirable, sophisticated lady in the big city. She commented that it was one of the worst pictures I ever made. 92 It frustrated her that she could not put her talents to good use, to not even sing in it. 93. Douglas Fairbanks Jr. and O'Hara in the trailer for Sinbad the Sailor, 1947. O'Hara was offered roles in The Razor's Edge, 1946, which went to Tierney, John Wayne's film Tycoon, 1947, which went to Lorraine Day 94 and Bob Hope's The Paleface, which went to Jane Russell. She turned down the role in The Paleface as she was going through a turbulent period in her personal life and didn't think I would be able to laugh every day and have fun. She later deeply regretted turning it down and confessed that she'd made a terrible mistake. 95 In 1947, O'Hara starred opposite Douglas Fairbanks Jr. as Shireen in the adventure film Sinbad the Sailor. O'Hara plays a glamorous adventuress who assists Sinbad, Fairbanks, locate the hidden treasure of Alexander the Great. She found the scenario to be ridiculous, but stated that it made a pot of money for RKO action adventures almost always did. 96 Malone wrote, O'Hara looks splendid and gets to wear some of the most stunning costumes of her career, a different one in almost every scene, but her dialogue is floridly empty. She exudes potential in early scenes, where her air of sybaritic slyness seems promise she'll be something more than window dressing, but thought the film totally lacked drama. The critic from the New York Times thought that O'Hara excessive costume changes made watching her an exhausting experience. 97. Film poster for Miracle on 34th Street, 1947. After a role as the Bostonian love interest of Cornel Wilde in Humberstone's The Home Stretch, 1947, 98 O'Hara had grown frustrated with Hollywood and took a considerable break to return to her native Ireland, where people thought she did not look well, having lost a lot of weight. 99 While there she received a call from 20th Century Fox to portray the role of Doris Walker, the mother of Susan Walker, played by a young Natalie Wood, in the Christmas film, Miracle on 34th Street, 1947. It became a perennial Christmas classic, with the traditional network television airing every Thanksgiving Day on NBC. 100 On Natalie Wood, O'Hara said, I have been mother to almost 40 children in movies, but I always had a special place in my heart for little Natalie. She always called me Mama Maureen and I called her Natasha. When Natalie and I shot the scenes in Macy's, we had to do them at night because the store was full of people doing their Christmas shopping during the day. Natalie loved this because it meant she was allowed to stay up late. I really enjoyed this time with Natalie. We loved to walk through the quiet, closed store and look at all the toys and girls' dresses and shoes. The day she died, I cried shamelessly. 101 The film garnered several awards, including an Academy Award nomination for Best Picture. 51. In O'Hara's last film of 1947, she played a Creole woman opposite Rex Harrison in John M. Stahl's The Foxes of Harrow. 102 The film was set in pre-Civil War New Orleans. 103 TCM state that O'Hara had been angling to star in Forever Ember, 1947, Fox's big historical romance at the time, but believed that due to a contractual clause, neither of her joint contract owners, Fox and RKO, would accept her appearing in a major star vehicle at the time. 104 During the production, O'Hara and Harrison intensely disliked each other from the outset, and she found him to be rude, vulgar, and arrogant. 105 Harrison had thought that she disliked him simply because he was English. He reportedly belched in her face during dance sequences and accused her of anti-Semitism, being married to a Jewish woman, Lily Palmer, at the time, which she vehemently denied. 106 Variety, while acknowledging the length, thought that O'Hara and Harrison carried off their dramatic scenes with surprising skill. 104 The following year, O'Hara starred opposite Robert Young in the commercially successful comedy film, Sitting Pretty. 107 Bosley Crowther of the New York Times praised O'Hara and Young as husband and wife, remarking that they were delightfully clever, acting with elaborate indignation, alternating with good-natured despair. 108. Fred McMurray in O'Hara in Father was a fullback, 1949. In 1949, O'Hara played what she described as a frustrated talent manager who shoots her star client in a jealous rage opposite Melvin Douglas in A Woman's Secret. She only agreed to appear in the production to meet the one-picture-a-year contractual obligation to RKO. 109 It was a box office flop and, at the time, not well received critically. Director Nicholas Ray himself was dissatisfied with it. 110 She next had a role as a wealthy widow who falls in love with an alcoholic artist, Dana Andrews, in the Victorian melodrama The Forbidden Street. 111 Which was shot at Shepperton Studios in London. 111 O'Hara felt that her performance was poor and admitted that she did not have her heart set on the film. 112 After the poorly received comedy Father was a fullback. 113 Dismissed by Picture Goer magazine as an unhappy mixture of Freud and football. 114 She starred in her first film with Universal Pictures. 115 The Escapist Adventure, Baghdad, portraying Princess Marjan. 116 The film was shot on location in the Alabama hills of Lone Pine, California. 116 O'Hara noted that the film earned a tremendous amount of money for Universal, and its success led to Universal buying into her RKO contract. 115 Malone wrote that she sings, dances, fights, and loves in a tale of daring do that ticks all the requisite boxes for an opulent history lesson, adding that when it came to dexterity in action, O'Hara was a nonpareil. 117. 1950-1957, work with John Ford, westerns and adventure films. John Wayne, O'Hara, and Victor McLaglen in Rio Grande, 1950. In the 1950 Technicolor western, Comanche Territory, O'Hara played an unusual role as the lead character of Katie Howards, a fiery saloon owner who dresses, behaves, and fights like a man, with hair tied back. 118 She mastered the American bullwhip during the filming. 115 In a role which Crowther believed was more significant than a setting sun in that she tackles her assignment with so much relish that the rest of the cast, even the Indians, are completely subdued. 119 She received first billing above CO star MacDonald Carey. 120 O'Hara then appeared as Countess d'Arnaud opposite John Payne in Tripoli, directed by O'Hara's second husband, William Houston Price. 121 She was next cast by John Ford in the western Rio Grande, the final installment of his Cavalry trilogy. It was the first of 5 films to be made over 22 years with John Wayne, including The Quiet Man, 1952, The Wings of Eagles, 1957, McLintock, 1963, and Big Jake, 1971, the first 3 of which were directed by Ford. 122 O'Hara declared that from our very first scenes together, working with John Wayne was comfortable for me. 123 Her chemistry with Wayne was so powerful that over the years many people assumed that they were married, and newspapers occasionally published sensationalist stories from people claiming to be their love child. 124 In April 1951, she received a call from Universal Pictures that she was cast as a Tunisian princess named Tanya in the swashbuckler film, Flame of Araby, 1951. 125-126 O'Hara despised the film and everything it stood for. 127 but had no choice but to make the film or be suspended. By that time, she began to grow tired of the roles she was offered and wanted to perform roles that had more depth than the ones she had done thus far. 128. O'Hara in 1950. In 1952, O'Hara played Claire, the daughter of the musketeer, Athos, in At Sword's Point, which according to her showed the new Maureen O'Hara. 129 The film had actually been made in 1949 but was not released until 1952. 12 The role was the most physically demanding of her career, doing her own stunts and training in the art of fencing for 6 weeks under Belgian-born fencing master Fred Cavens. 130 She disliked director Lewis Allen and producer Howard Hughes, whom she thought was cold as ice. 131 The critic from the New York Times appreciated O'Hara's swordsmanship in the film, stating that she was snarling like a fury, impales her opponents as though she were threading a needle. 132 O'Hara next played Irish immigrant Australian-based cowgirl, Del McGuire, in Lewis Milestone's drama Kangaroo, 1952, set during the drought of 1900. Kangaroo is noted for being the first Technicolor film to be shot on location in Australia. 133 Mostly shot in the desert near Port Augusta. Although O'Hara disliked the production due to changes made to the script. 134 She found the Australians extremely welcoming. 135 The Australian government offered her a plot of land during the production to own permanently, but she turned it down for political reasons, only to later discover that significant oil reserves were on the land. 136 In 1952, O'Hara starred opposite John Wayne again in Ford's romantic comedy drama, The Quiet Man, shot on location in Cong, County Mayo, Ireland. 137 O'Hara described the film as her personal favorite of all the pictures I have made. It is the one I am most proud of, and I tend to be very protective of it. I loved Mary-Kate Danaher. I loved the hell and fire in her. 138 Malone notes that she rarely appeared in an interview without mentioning this fact. 139 O'Hara was disconcerted with Ford's harsh treatment of Wayne during the production and constant ribbing. 140 Though Ford generally treated her very well, on one occasion when filming a cart scene in which the wind in her eyes made it difficult to see, Ford yelled, "Open your damn eyes," and O'Hara flipped, responding with, "What would a bald-headed son of a bitch like you know about hair?" lashing across his eyeballs. 141 O'Hara and John Wayne in The Quiet Man, 1952. The Quiet Man was both a critical and commercial success, grossing $3.8 million domestically in its first year of release against a budget of $1.75 million. 142-143 Film critic James Berardinelli called O'Hara the perfect match for Wayne, and that she never allows him to steal a scene without a fight, and occasionally snatches one away from him on her own. 144 While film critic and sports writer Danny Peary praised their chemistry, exhibiting strength through love, vulnerability, and tenderness. 145 According to Harry Carey Jr., who noted that O'Hara held a strong gaze with Wayne in all of the films they made together, director Ford was uncomfortable with the romantic scenes in the film and refused to shoot the scene until the last day. 146 The film was nominated for 6 Academy Awards including Best Picture. 147 Though O'Hara was devastated at not even being nominated for an award. 148 Film director Martin Scorsese called The Quiet Man one of the greatest movies of all time. 149 And in 1996 it topped a poll of the greatest films in the Irish Times. 139 O'Hara's last release of 1952 was Against All Flags opposite Errol Flynn, marking her only collaboration with the actor. 150 O'Hara, knowing Flynn's reputation as a womanizer, was on close guard during the production. 151 Though she respected him professionally and was quite fond of him personally, she found Flynn's alcoholism a problem and remarked that if the director prohibited alcohol on the set, then Errol would inject oranges with booze and eat them during breaks. 152 According to Steve Jacques, O'Hara outdid Flynn in the combat scenes, many of which had to be cut from the final version to protect Flynn's heroic image. 151 The film was a commercially successful venture. 153-154 The following year she appeared in The Redhead from Wyoming, which she dismissed as another Western sting crew for Universal. 155 And appeared in another Western with Jeff Chandler, War Arrow. O'Hara noted that Jeff was a real sweetheart, but acting with him was like acting with a broomstick. 156 O'Hara with Errol Flynn in Against All Flags, 1952. In 1954, O'Hara starred in Malaga, also known as Fire Over Africa, which was shot on location in Spain. O'Hara played a Mata Hari-like character, a secret agent who attempts to find the ringleader of a smuggling ring in Tangiers. 157 Malone compares the relationship in the film between O'Hara as Joanne and MacDonald Carey as Agent Van Logan to that of Bogart and Bacall, with frequent verbal sparring. The Monthly Film Bulletin wrote, Maureen O'Hara looks very handsome in Technicolor, but her expressions are limited mostly to disgust at shooting smugglers or pulling knives from dying men. 158 In 1955, O'Hara made her fourth picture with Ford, The Long Grey Line, which she considered being by far the most difficult due to declining relations with Ford. 159 John Wayne had originally intended CO starring, but due to a conflicting schedule O'Hara recommended Tyrone Power in replacement. 158 Malone notes that the Irish accents by O'Hara and Power are overdone, and that there is little trace of a Donegal accent in it. 160 The film production marked the lowest point of O'Hara's relationship with Ford, and each day he would greet her with, "Well, did herself have a good shit this morning?" He would ask the crew if she was in a good mood, and if that was the case, he would say, "Then we're going to have a horrible day," and vice versa. He would provoke her by telling her to move her fat Irish ass. Their relationship deteriorated further when O'Hara reportedly saw him kissing an actor on set, Ford knew that she thought he was a closeted homosexual. 161 In The Magnificent Matador, O'Hara played a spoiled, wealthy American who falls in love with a brooding, tormented, about-to-retire matador, Anthony Quinn, in Mexico. 162 Ava Gardner, who was dating a bullfighter in real life, Luis Miguel Dominguez. 163 and Lana Turner were considered for O'Hara's part of Karen Harrison. 164 The film was panned by the critics. 165 One of her best-known roles came later year, playing Lady Godiva in Lady Godiva of Coventry. Contrary to what Universal claimed to the press, O'Hara was not nude in the film, wearing a full-length body leotard and underwear that was concealed by my long tresses. 166. O'Hara and Claude Rains in Lisbon, 1956. In December 1955, O'Hara negotiated a new 5-picture contract with Columbia Pictures boss Harry Cohn, with $85,000 per picture. 166. The following year, she starred in the Portuguese-set melodramatic mystery film Lisbon for Republic Pictures. For the first time in her career she played a villain, and remarked that Bette Davis was right, bitches are fun to play. 167 In the film, the first Hollywood production to be shot in Portugal. 168 She is caught in a love triangle with Ray Milland and Claude Rains, who according to Malone both attempted to outswab each other during the whole production. 169 Later that year she made Everything But the Truth for Universal, at a time in her career when she was trying to distance herself from adventure films. 170 O'Hara thought the film was so bad that neither she nor her family saw it, though she enjoyed working with John Forsythe. 171. For years I wondered why John Ford grew to hate me so much. I couldn't understand what made him say and do so many terrible things to me. I realize now that he didn't hate me at all. He loved me very much and even thought that he was in love with me. O'Hara on John Ford. 172. In 1957, O'Hara marked the end of her collaboration with John Ford with The Wings of Eagles, which was based on the true story of an old friend of Ford's, Frank Spigweed, a naval aviator who became a screenwriter in Hollywood. Malone wrote that Wayne and O'Hara interact well in these early scenes, giving effortless performances and exhibiting a strong chemistry. One can sense the off-screen friendship and little nuances between them. 173 Though not a major commercial success, it fared better in the eyes of the critics. 174 The relationship between O'Hara and Ford grew increasingly bitter, and that year he referred to her as a greedy bitch to director Joseph McBride, who had shown an interest in casting her for The Rising of the Moon. O'Hara later referred to him as an instant con man who would say the opposite of what he felt instead of his bitterness. He wanted to be born in Ireland and he wanted to be an Irish rebel. The fact that he wasn't left him very bitter. 175. 1959-1991, later career. When we arrived in Havana on April 15, 1959, Cuba was a country experiencing revolutionary change. Only 4 months before, Fidel Castro and his supporters had toppled Fulgencio Batista. Che Guevara was often at the Capri Hotel. Che would talk about Ireland and all the guerrilla warfare that had taken place there. He knew every battle in Ireland and all of its history. And I finally asked, Che, you know so much about Ireland and talk constantly about it. How do you know so much? He said, well, my grandmother's name was Lynch and I learned everything I know about Ireland at her knee. He was Che Guevara Lynch. That famous cap he wore was an Irish rebel's cap. I spent a great deal of time with Che Guevara while I was in Havana. Today he is a symbol for freedom fighters wherever they are in the world and I think he is a good one. O'Hara on filming Our Man in Havana and meeting Che Guevara. 176. Although O'Hara was consciously moving away from adventure films, an ongoing court case against Confidential magazine in 1957 and 1958 and an operation for a slipped disc, after which she had to wear a full body brace for 4 months, effectively ruled out any further action films for her. 177 During this period away from film she took lessons in singing to improve her abilities. 178 O'Hara had a soprano voice and described singing as her first love, which she was able to channel through television. In the late 1950s and early 1960s, she was a guest on musical variety shows with Perry Como, Andy Williams, Betty Grable, and Tennessee Ernie Ford. In 1960, O'Hara starred on Broadway in the musical Christine, which ran for 12 performances. It was a problematic production, and the director, Jerome Chodorov, was so displeased with it that he requested that his name be removed from the credits. 179 She found her Broadway failure to be a major disappointment and returned to Hollywood. 180 That year she released 2 recordings, Love Letters from Maureen O'Hara and Maureen O'Hara Sings Her Favorite Irish Songs. 181-182 She described Love Letters from Maureen O'Hara, a moderate success, as an act of revenge, given that Hollywood would not let her appear in a musical. 183. O'Hara with Brian Keith in The Deadly Companions, 1961. In 1959, O'Hara returned to film, starring as a secretary who is sent from London to Havana to assist a British secret agent, Alec Guinness, in the commercially successful Our Man in Havana. 184 O'Hara beat Lauren Bacall to the role as she was busy with other engagements. 185 Though the film was critically acclaimed, Crowther of the New York Times felt that the characters of O'Hara and the daughter could have been made more humorous and spirited than they are. 186 The following year, O'Hara appeared in the CBS television film, Mrs. Miniver, but despite some critics approving her performance, most thought that the remake was ill-timed and that she could not top Greer Garson's performance in the 1942 Oscar-winning film. 187. In 1961, O'Hara portrayed Kit Tilden in the western The Deadly Companions, Sam Peckinpah's feature film debut. Playing against stereotype as the strong, aggressive redhead, she plays a character who is vulnerable to rape and violence from men. The plot involves her traveling across Apache territory with an ex-sergeant to bury her young son next to his father in the desert. 188 Malone considered her character in the film to be radically underdeveloped. 189 While O'Hara acknowledged that Peckinpah later reached icon status as a great director of westerns, she thought he was just awful and one of the strangest and most objectionable people I had ever worked with. 190 Later that year she starred in The Parent Trap, one of her most popular films, opposite a young Hayley Mills. Filmed just before The Deadly Companions, but released just after, she co-starred with Brian Keith in both films. O'Hara credits Mills for the success of the film, remarking that she really did bring two different girls to life in the movie and wrote that Sharon and Susan were so believable that I'd sometimes forget myself and look for the other one when Hayley and I were standing around the set. 191 Malone notes that this was the film that she made a transition from comely maiden to trendy mother, 192 one which received some of the best critical plaudits of her career. 193 O'Hara was subsequently involved in a legal dispute with Walt Disney, backed by the Screen Actors Guild, over billing for the film. She never worked for Disney again. 194. Bust of O'Hara in Kells, Ireland. The following year, O'Hara appeared opposite James Stewart in Mr. Hobbs Takes a Vacation, about a family vacation in a dilapidated house on the beach. She played Peggy, the wife of Hobbs, Stewart, a character who is very family-oriented and talkative. 195 Though the two became friends, O'Hara confessed that she was not happy with the dynamic between her and Stewart on screen, commenting that every scene revolves around Jimmy Stewart. I was never allowed to really play out a single scene in the picture. He was a remarkable actor, but not a generous one. 196 With the success of The Parent Trap and Mr. Hobbs Takes a Vacation, O'Hara felt that her career had been given a new lease of life. 197 She united